I mean, we have a front row seat to what works and what doesn't work, to patients that have failed standard of care and that are looking for answers. Welcome to the Big Idea Podcast. Eddie Bravo and Scott Nelson.
What's up?
How you guys doing?
How you doing?
Muy bueno.
Is this thing on? It's working?
It is on. What a job to get this podcast going.
This green screen is incredible. It's like it's like we're in Brazil. Every beach come from Brazil.
That is true. The years that we've been hanging out, man, it's like about 20 years, and finally you're down here.
20? Yeah, something. Yeah, I guess it was 20. The first time I met Ed Clay, it was at a no-gi grappling tournament, and they were rare back in the days. Like no-gi Grappler's Quest was like like Abu Dhabi, and then Grappler's Quest. But in the West Coast, I mean, they were rare. And we were at some grappling tournament, and there was a jiu-jitsu magazine called Submission Fighter, and it was like a fanzine. It was a step above a fanzine, but not quite like a magazine that you would find at like the airport. And Ed Clay just bought it. He was the new owner, right? Yeah,
that's right.
You were
yeah.
the new owner. Someone else started it. You bought it. You were 19 years old, and I never forget. You asked me to write an article for him. I'm like, because at Jean-Jacques, I was the MMA expert. Like, no one knew more about the UFC than me. I watched the UFC all the time. UFC 1 through 8, I had it on an 8-hour VHS tape with just the fights and the tail of the tape, everything else cut out, and it's like just 1 through 8. And I watched that shit every Friday at work at the strip club when I DJ'd. It's an 8-hour shift on Friday. Every Friday, I'd play that tape, and so I knew fucking everything about the UFC. There wasn't that much to know, really. There was only 8 UFCs at that point. Or actually, this was a little after that. But anyways, and then I wrote an article, and wasn't it with like Chuck? It was with Chuck Liddell.
Man, I don't remember.
What was the article about? I forget what the article was about. But the thing that I remember the most was talking to you, and being so impressed. I was like almost 30 at that point. And you were 19, and I remember thinking, like, this guy sounds like a 40-year-old entrepreneur businessman. And after just a few minutes of talking, I'm like, dude, you sound like, you don't sound 19. You sound like a dude who's going places. And, man, you've done so much over the years, and to watch you evolve into what you're doing now, trying, your best, and doing everything you can to save as many lives as possible and extend lives with what you're doing at CHIPSA Hospital in Mexico, where we're at now. It's just unbelievable, man. But I'm not surprised at all.
Thanks, man. It's been a crazy 20 years, and it's the grind was real, and back then I just knew that I wanted to do something big. I didn't know what it was. Mixed martial arts was kind of what I'd always envisioned at the time. So, from the time I was 11 years old, I was training, and that was kind of my world. And so, actually, when I retired from coaching per se and sold my gym, it was like, oh, what do I do with my life now? And just it was kind of, how do we give back, and how do you change the world? That was the idea. But yeah, I remember, man, and I also remember like sitting in the back of the King of the Cage in like trailers talking about some crazy things. And the first time I trained with you, I was like, man, it was like a hotel room. You're like, hey, check this thing out. And you're showing me moves and stuff. I'm like, oh man. And then you were showing me rubber guard. This was very undeveloped rubber guard.
Before YouTube, we exchanged techniques in hotel rooms.
Yes.
With Mark Lehman. And
Yes.
All the time.
It was all about hotel rooms
time.
on the floor. Check this out. I got this new arm bar. Have you seen the new Dars? There's a new choke called the Dars. I'm like, what the fuck is this? It was pretty crazy. And you ended up, again, not surprised, you ended up buying or owning your own gym, Nashville Mixed Martial Arts. You brought me out for my first seminar. I came out to Nashville, and I stayed with you at your house. And at that point, can we talk about this?
Oh, sure, yeah.
At that point, you had a jiu-jitsu instructor, and you had, he was a Brazilian guy named Luis whatever. He was a Brazilian guy, And he was there living with his son too.
Yeah.
And I didn't, it was my first seminar in the United States, and I came out, and we were watching TV. It was the night before the seminar, and that you're a jiu-jitsu instructor. He would not acknowledge me. He would not look at me, and his son wouldn't either. We were all like sitting there watching TV. I don't know if we ordered pizza or whatever, but they just were giving me a massive, icy, cold shoulder, and I didn't really get it. And the next day at the seminar, 8 people showed up, and they were all out-of-towners. There was none of your students. You had about 100 students. None of them showed up. And then we found out that your instructor pretty much made it so that if they showed up to my seminar, they would be in some kind of trouble.
Yeah, it was a setup. It was a setup.
Imagine the guy you pay to work at your business sabotaging.
Yeah.
It was
Sabotage.
brutal. It was brutal. I'm over it now, but we ended up letting him go. But yeah, we had this seminar, and I'd always told people how awesome you were. And back then, I think we were purple belts together. I was a purple belt, you were a brown belt, something like that. And
You didn't understand the hate, though.
I still don't understand it.
You had no
I still don't get it.
idea. You're oblivious to it.
Yeah.
You're like, this is going to be a great seminar. People show up. They show up last minute for seminars. They'll show up because no one pre-reg. There's like 8 or 9 people pre-regged.
Yeah.
And go, oh, yeah, we'll get like 20 guys showing. For sure, my guy's going to show up. Nobody showed up.
Yeah, it really sucked.
That was the worst seminar I've ever done.
The first one's the worst one.
Yeah.
It was brutal. But we had a good time in Nashville. But
Crazy times in that. Then from that point on, every time I went to Nashville, then I came back again, and it was a lot better. But man, we have over the last 4 or 5 days while I've been getting treatment at the CHIPSA hospital. No, I don't have cancer. I'm just getting.
No rumors, please.
I'm just trying to get like some rejuvenation going with the treatments. Like the Gerson therapy is a great therapy for people who have cancer, but it's also a great therapy for people who don't have cancer. It's basically just juicing and coffee enemas. And you guys don't have cancer. You guys are juicing and doing coffee enemas.
Every
You're
day.
doing if it's great for people that have cancer, it's just as good for people that don't. So some of you guys out there thinking that I have cancer, I don't. I'm fine. Everything's beautiful. I'm just here to recharge my body, reset my mind, and I'm going to be 50 years old next year, and after 25 plus years of jiu-jitsu, man, I need this. I need some kind of tune up, to say it mildly,
yeah, and I always like to clarify, I don't look at Gerson therapy as the cancer therapy, just an adjunct diet, great adjunct diet. And I've seen it do amazing things for a lot of things. It's great for inflammation. It's great for, I've seen it support my mom with rheumatoid arthritis, which was an amazing thing to watch. She actually came into her hospital in a wheelchair years ago. And I've seen it do amazing things.
And she's out of a wheelchair now?
Oh, yeah.
Dancing.
Wow.
Yeah, dancing.
She was in a wheelchair.
Yeah, so how we started CHIPSA, and this is kind of making a longer story short.
Yeah, go through your story a little bit for the people that are watching this, like my people, and tell them a little bit of. I'm sure you talked about this before in your podcast, but give me. You went from. You fought MMA 3 times, right?
Yep.
You had your own martial arts academy in Nashville.
Yeah, at one point
Nashville
about 1,000
MMA.
students.
Then you got hurt. You had some injuries, and then you got addicted to painkillers.
Yep.
And you had a problem with that, and then you and then take it from there.
Yeah, so in 2007 or 2008, I tore my LCL, PCL, meniscus training, and we had team doctors, and they got me on prescription pain pills. So I was on them for about 2 years.
Which ones exactly?
It was hydrocodone, oxycodone, and they're opiates. And so I was taking them for about 2 years. And a couple years in...
Is that like Oxycontin at all?
It's a little
Same
less...
family?
Yeah, same family.
Okay.
Yeah, same family as Oxycontin. Highly addictive. And I accidentally got, addicted. And so about 2 years later, I went to stop one day. And
Wait, you were addicted for 2 years?
Yes.
Holy shit.
Yeah, about 2 years later, I didn't even really know though. I was just taking them every single day, and then it was, I started kind of getting an idea, and I'm like, okay, well, it's time to stop. And so I went to stop one day and went through withdrawal. So I tried to stop a number of times over about a 6-month period and wasn't able to. So I went to see a therapist, and I told him I'm completely functional running my companies, but I'd rather have a clear brain and deal with the pain than a foggy brain and no pain whatsoever. The therapist said, America's behind the times when it comes to opiate withdrawal. Google ibogaine. Ibogaine, yeah. So I Google ibogaine. It comes from the Tabernathy iboga root in Gabon, Africa. It's what the Bwiti use for the rites of passage ceremony.
Kind of like it's an African version of ayahuasca.
Yes, yeah, it's just deeply introspective, but I was skeptical, so I was like, I don't know. It's supposedly blocked 100% of opiate withdrawal, but I watched a couple documentaries. I was like, you know what? I'll give it a try. So I took a plane to Mexico City, took a bus 2 hours
By
south.
yourself?
By myself, yeah. Took a bus 2 hours south. Did ibogaine in somebody's bedroom in Tepoztlan, Mexico. Was home 72 hours later. Never had a withdrawal. Never had a craving. And then, I asked myself, if this is not available in the United States and can help people, what else is out there? And so that kind of sent me down the rabbit hole of looking at things for my mom as well. She was very sick with a rare form of rheumatoid arthritis. So I was working on the opiate thing to help opiate addicts, and then I was looking for my mom. Fast forward 2015, we were looking to working on licensing in Mexico for years. And we were actually at an ibogaine clinic, and the guy was driving us around. He drove us by this old hospital building.
So you were looking to, in Mexico, help like open up an ibogaine type center? Is that what you were doing?
Yes, we're always looking at doing alternative type things. Actually, this was our plan, like a 5 to 7 year plan where we're at. Right now it's was a 10 to 15 year plan where we're at now. But back then we were able to do it all at once when we came across this hospital building. So we drive by this hospital building, and we were with this guy that owned the ibogaine clinic. He said, this hospital's closed down. Took a picture of it. When we got back to Nashville, we called some real estate agents in Mexico, said, hey, do you know who owns this hospital? How can we can we talk to the owner? He called us back, and it turned out to be the original Gerson Hospital.
Gerson?
Yes.
Gerson Therapy.
Yeah, the original Gerson Hospital. And so they also had a treatment called Colles toxins, and I had read a study on Colles toxins for rheumatoid arthritis from 1923. And so Scott, Dedrick, and I purchased the hospital. My mom, we hired some of the original staff. My mom was our second patient. She came in a wheelchair. She left 3 weeks later walking, and now almost, 4.5 years later, she's still in remission today.
And she had rheumatoid arthritis, a rare form?
Yes.
Which basically
put
her in a wheelchair.
When I say rare, the problem was that she couldn't handle it was more of the medication. She couldn't handle the standard of care medications like the Humira, the immune suppressants. It gave her multiple staph infections. She got tuberculosis at one point. She broke her back on a short fall due to the prednisone, and she just couldn't handle the medications. They give you immunosuppressants, so a lot of people can't handle those things. The side effects are pretty brutal for some. And so she came in a wheelchair. She left walking. And, to this day, she's still in remission. It was bad, though. It was attacking her organs. She had a rash from basically head to toe. And so, with Gerson therapy, or rather with the hospital doing alternative type medicines, we saw some people getting better.
Wait a minute. So you, Scott Nelson, and Dedrick, what's his last name?
Perry.
You guys, all three of you guys bought CHIPSA Hospital.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And we saw a lot of people not, some people getting better, a lot of people weren't. And it's like, how do we build a bridge with the conventional community? And we've tried nearly every alternative treatment that there is out there, I think. And so we started building bridges with the conventional community. And one of the first trials that we did was with a company called Batu Biologics. They had a product called Valovax. We treated about 250 patients. That trial would have cost them around $25 million. In the United States, we did it for about $750,000. And they had a lot of great scientists working with them. They had a Nobel Prize winner on their scientific advisory board. They had a guy named Francisco Marancola. He was the former chief of immunogenetics for the National Institute of Health. He actually is one of the authors of one of the main textbooks for immunotherapy for cancer for conventional oncologists, and started becoming friends with a lot of their team and some other pharma teams and biotech teams, and realized we have a lot in common. And a lot of the stuff we're doing at CHIPSA is in many ways cutting edge. They're like, oh, you've been doing immunotherapy for almost 40 years. There's a lot of immunotherapies that we're doing. Dendritic cells, for instance, CHIPSA started doing in 2000. It wasn't approved by the FDA until 2010, a drug called Provenge. For instance, that drug Provenge in the United States costs around $93,000 for 3 doses. We do a dendritic cell vaccine at CHIPSA for about $12,000 for 3 doses. So $93,000 or $12,000. But so we're combining a lot of conventional alternative things. We do things like checkpoint inhibitors. We do chemotherapy, but at a lower dose. We look to cause a danger signal in the cancer and then stimulate the immune system to go in. We follow a lot of what Polly Massinger does and the danger model. And we're very, very open-minded. So we kind of took the MMA approach, like in the early days of the MMA. This might be how you described it back in the day, but you have like the Brazilians coming in. It's like Royce Gracie versus karate, like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu versus karate or Kung Fu. And what style really works? And then we saw Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu work. And then the wrestlers learned how to defend the submissions. And then the kickboxers learned how to defend the takedowns. And then it started morphing into really mixed martial arts. But you couldn't hide what was real and what wasn't real in the cage. You had to see. Same thing with this. I mean, we have a front row seat to what works and what doesn't work, to patients that have failed standard of care and that are looking for answers. And a lot of people say, well, why isn't there a cure for cancer? I don't think it's a big conspiracy, personally. I believe the reason that we don't have a cure for cancer is because of ego. Everybody wants to be right. It's got to be this one treatment or this one. It's a very complex disease. You can give 2 patients with the same cancer, the same treatment. One patient could respond, the other wouldn't. Like, why is that? It's because it's very complex, and it's not just going to be one thing. I think it's a combination of the mind. I think it's a combination of diet. It's a combination of treatments, and it's supplements, and a lot of different things. It's not just going to be one thing. But if I were to say, why isn't there a cure for cancer? It's ego. It's ego. The problem, you look at, there's something called Coley's toxins, which we do at CHIPSA. And if you're to read the textbooks or if people were to Google Coley's toxins, you'd see that it's not a question if Coley's toxins work. They absolutely worked. It was controversial for a little while, but from the Helen Coley Knott's monographs that she published in, I believe, 1952, of her dad's 896 or 891 patients from 1891 to 1936, Dr. Coley had a higher success rate treating most cancers than we do today. But it was just ego, really, that kept that from coming. That they didn't understand the mechanisms of action. And what I think science misses is that, the mechanisms of action, how this stuff works is important, but the patient doesn't care about that. If you're saying, oh, we can't move this drug forward because we don't know how it works, well, but it's working. Like, figure out how it works afterwards, and let's use it in patients. But that's kind of how this stuff works. Sometimes if they can't figure out how it works, then they don't want to move it forward. But Dr. Coley had a higher success rate treating most cancers from 1891 to 1936 than we do today. So we opened CHIPSA, and then 2018, Trump signed the right to try legislation, which is amazing legislation. Nobody's using it yet. We're going to be the first. So we're starting something called United Cancer Centers in the United States. We open mid next year in Las Vegas. First location is going to be Las Vegas. Second location is going to be Nashville. And we're going to be the first institution to implement the right to try legislation. So we'll be taking a lot of different genetic tests, something called a liquid biopsy where you can...
So explain what the right to try legislation is. Like, how is it, what is it changing?
Yeah, so the right to try legislation is, it says that any drug that's been through a phase 1 trial, a patient can ask for it from the pharmaceutical company, and the pharmaceutical company has the right to give it to them without being sued. So before, pharmaceutical companies were afraid to give patients these drugs because they could be sued, or the data under compassionate use could be held against them. With this, the data can't be held against them, and they can't be sued if something goes wrong. The patient
has to sign something,
informed
like a
consent,
waiver, kinda.
Informed consent. But see, what we're doing at United Cancer Centers, informed consent's an interesting thing, because like everybody's like, oh well, they got to sign informed consent. And this is, the patient, might be desperate. It's like, hell yeah, they're desperate. They're about to die of cancer. I think patients can be responsible enough to make an informed decision. I think it goes beyond informed consent. We want to bring on informed decision making, where they look at their genetic information with our oncologist, with our geneticist, with our nutritionist, and they make an informed decision. We're going to be working with IBM Watson to curate a list of all the treatments throughout the world. So, hey, if we can't get it for you at United Cancer Centers, you can go to China and get this here based on your genetic information. You can go to Germany and get this here based on your genetic information. Informed decision. Here's a list of all the things that your genetics are saying, and here's a list of the possibilities that we know of through what the Watson database creates for us. So that's going to be really the difference, because we're going to be taking, this is kind of interesting. I don't think people understand this. So there's diagnostic tools, and then there's research tools. You can't give a diagnosis off of a research tool. So, but a lot of people, I say conventional people will say, well, you can't use research tools though. And the FDA, in a way, would say you can't use research tools for a diagnosis, which I would agree with. But you can use multiple research tools to make a better informed decision. You're like, oh, if the genetic test says, the liquid biopsy says this is an FDA approved, and this microbiome genetic test says this, and this, if you combine a lot of research tools and then you take the diagnostic tool and you morph them into an idea to make the best informed decision, you're making a better decision. And so we're going to be matching patients' genetics with drugs that have been through a phase 1. So basically taking a process that would normally take 10 to 15 years with the FDA and time collapsing it into as little as 12 to 18 months. So that's kind of, I rambled there for a little bit. That's in a nutshell.
Now, how does Big Pharma feel about this right to try legislation? Is it good for them, or is this something that they're going to push back against and try to change it?
The thing, we're working with Big Pharma in a way, because ultimately they don't love the legislation.
How does it hurt them?
Well, one, they're worried about their clinical trials and, people using these drugs and not collecting the data. But what we're going to be doing, we're going to Big Pharma and saying, what's a list of all the data that you want to collect? We're going to collect all that they can't use, or that they can't collect in an FDA trial because it could be used against them, but it would be really good to know if they could collect it. So we're going to be collecting more data than any clinical trial. People say, oh, you guys aren't collecting it. No. We're collecting more. We have a tumor bank. We have a genetic database. We're going to have a crystal ball, ultimately, to see what really works and what doesn't work. And the pharmaceutical companies can use that crystal ball to better design their trials in the future. I mean, this is revolutionary. We have a great team. Dr. Michael Liebman, he actually sits on the scientific advisory board of the Pharma Foundation. He's our chief scientific officer, one of the top clinical trial experts on the planet. He's a brilliant. He has a company called IPQ Analytics, and he always says, look at the abstraction of the question. So clinical trials right now are on a very linear model. It's very linear. We're looking at chaos theory. I mean, you can't. The problem with clinical trials being a linear model, the world doesn't work that way. The world is not linear. It's chaotic. You've got to take these data points and make sense of them. And the more data that you can get, the more sense that you can make of them. So that's what we're doing. We're collecting a tremendous amount of data to figure out what really works and what doesn't work. And why does this subgroup of patients respond, but this doesn't? That's where it's at. The problem is that the net is so wide in these clinical trials, you don't really get very good information out of it. A drug passes a clinical trial, when it's gone out and used in the real world, it doesn't work. Why is that? So yes, we are looking to change the system in that, but in a way that's a win for everybody. Most importantly, the patients. I think for so long it's been done in one way, but they forgot what's important. And that's the human being. That's the human being. They act like we're protecting them. They're desperate. They're this. Yes, they're desperate. They're desperate for help. And they're smart enough. They're responsible enough as a grown-up to make an informed decision. They take all the power away from the patient. Oh, you're not smart enough to make a decision. Oh, they can be taken advantage of. Yes, they can be taken advantage of. But like, I believe that patients have the power and the intelligence to make an informed decision, especially when it's all laid out for them. And that's what we're going to be doing.
It was beautiful, man.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, and it's incredible that you've, basically, you sold your MMA gym. You basically aren't making any money off martial arts like I am. You've moved way beyond that and dedicated your life to saving lives, or trying to save lives and trying to improve the lives of those with terminal diseases, and it's incredible, man. I'm amazed, but not surprised.
Oh, thanks, man. It's been a labor of love, man. Scott and I have been through, with this, it's been there's no book that prepares you to how to deal with, terminally ill patients. And, there are a lot of ethical questions, and we do what we think is right all the time. I'm not saying we're always doing the right thing, but we do what we think is right. We really, really try. And when you're dealing with dying, sick patients, with one foot in the grave and one on a banana peel, and you're pulling them up, and sometimes you see them come out of it, it's amazing. And I remember, like, when we first started, I would sit in my car and just cry. Just because you feel that pain of the families, and you're wanting to, I would have the I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, what am I doing? When a patient would die and when it would fail, like, oh my God, and you have those conversations with yourself, and then you kind of, after a while, you learn to deal with it. Like, I wasn't as spiritual or before, but then I pray like 10 times a day, man. I mean, it's constant. Thank you, giving thanks, giving gratitude, thank you for this, thank you for that, thank you for this, thank you for that, thank you, God. That's part of the sanity part. So you get a closer connection spiritually, and you just realize that, we talked about this, on somebody's deathbed, it's not money that they're wishing they had. It's like, oh, I wish I had more money. Yeah. I wish I had.
It's the last thing on their mind.
Yeah. They might have regrets about family. They might have regrets about, friendships or, human connection that they lost. And that's what I've learned tremendously, is it's all about the human connection. All the other stuff is whatever, man. I hear problems, and we're human. So we all experience problems, and sometimes, we're not at our best, but at the same time, it's like having that human connection. And the idea, one of the things I love, my favorite quotes is, give without remembering, receive without forgetting. Like, how do you just give and give and give? When in doubt, focus out.
Yeah.
That's the thing, man. When's the last time you felt bad feeding the homeless? You don't feel bad feeding the homeless. You feel good because you're giving. That's what life's about. So, but it's been, all that's great, but it's been tough. It's been a tough battle, but very much worth it. So.
Yeah, it's, whew.
I become an expert toilet cleaner.
Yeah. So, how did Scotty Nelson here get him? But before we get into that, Scotty Nelson in the jiu-jitsu world is, we all met through jiu-jitsu.
Yep.
And Scotty, he's just like, he just knows everybody in the jiu-jitsu world, because he started OTM on the mat, and it was one of the first pure jiu-jitsu companies, DVDs, clothing line.
Long before DVDs.
Yeah. Oh yeah, VHS
Long
tapes.
VHS tapes.
And he would make like the coolest mixtapes of jiu-jitsu fights from Brazil. He lived in Brazil for 4 or 5 years, right? And he could speak Portuguese. Knows everybody in the jiu-jitsu world, all the Americans, all the Brazilians, everybody. Most people love him. There's a couple people that hate him, just like me. A lot of controversy, a lot of crazy times and stuff. And he sponsored, through OTM, his company, sponsored so many of the jiu-jitsu legends that have come up, all of them, like BJ Penn, everybody, and myself included. And he also reffed one jiu-jitsu fight in his entire life, and that was Metamoris.
Yeah.
That was
If you're gonna do one, might as well be the biggest, right?
That was a crazy one, man. It was like
for sure had
that
the
was
fight
a
of the
crazy one.
decade.
That fight was insane.
What was the first year you went to U.S. Open? Because that was the first time I met you.
U.S. Open, was
Yeah.
that the one in Santa Cruz?
Santa Cruz, yeah.
Yeah, Santa
Claudio
Cruz.
Franza.
Yeah, me and Todd White from Jean Jacques. There wasn't that many jiu-jitsu tournaments back in the days. It was like Joe Moreira had the biggest one.
Yep.
And then there was a Santa Cruz tournament that happened once a year, and me and Todd White, we would drive to it. And I'll never forget, and this kind of ties into Gerson therapy a little bit, but the first time I competed in Santa Cruz was like 97, and jiu-jitsu back then, and even to this day, 95% of the people that compete in jiu-jitsu or just training jiu-jitsu are just nerds. It's just a bunch of nerds, because most like tough guy, douchebags, they can never handle jiu-jitsu, because in jiu-jitsu you have to walk through the fire for a while, and that means you are going to lose the game of death on a daily basis multiple times. So if you're a tough guy, you generally won't have the ego to deal with getting beat in this game of death. And even though it isn't like a physical beating where you're getting, beat up like in blood and cuts and all that, it's just jiu-jitsu. We're just choking each other out. It's an emotional thing. And tapping out doesn't feel good ever. And tapping people out feels great all the time. So you have to deal with that. So what ends up happening is jiu-jitsu is its own self douchebag filter. And what you're left with is a bunch of dudes who are experts at killing not just regular people. That's too easy. But we're experts at killing people who are experts at killing people. That's what we're into. So it's just a bunch of nerds. And the last thing we want to do is fight. The last thing we're thinking about is fighting anybody. We're a bunch of pussies. I grew up a pussy. I'm still a pussy. Most jiu-jitsu players that are training at schools today, they're just a bunch of pussies, just like me. We're not looking for fights. If you're out there looking for fights, then you're not going to survive in jiu-jitsu. You just can't. You're not going to be able to take losing, and you're eventually going to be avoiding people. And the better you get, it's going to be more pressure for you to not to tap, and then you're going to disappear and you're going to stop training. That's just the way it goes. So back to Santa Cruz. Me and Todd White were up there, two pussies, and place is just filled with a bunch of pussies. And I'm seeing this guy and jogging. We're waiting to go. We're just sitting there. We're not doing any like professional warm-ups or anything like that. And I'm seeing this guy run up the stairs and warming up. He's got a hoodie on, and he's got the top of the hoodie on covering his face. So see something, you could tell he's like Mexican or something, Latin. Like he looked mean, and he had his head covered. He got the hoodie on, and he's warming up, running up and down the stairs. I'm like, we got like real athletes in here. Like who is this guy? And I was a blue belt at the time, and he was a white belt. And I had my eye on him. I'm like, man, that guy looks scary. And thank God he wasn't a blue belt. And I was competing on my mats, and I would look over and I would see this guy. There was all this noise because he was really good. Apparently he wrestled his whole life, and now he's a white belt, and he's like running through people, putting them in. I'll never forget looking over, and he had a guy in a spladle. And it was hilarious. I'm like, man, who is this scary wrestler guy? God damn. And then the next year, I came out. Now I'm a purple belt the next year. And he got promoted to purple belt. I remember his name was Javi Vasquez. I'm like, yeah, that guy's tough. And I remember me and Todd White getting to Santa Cruz, and we looked at the brackets. I just wanted to make sure this guy wasn't in my weight division, because I knew he was a purple belt now, and I'm a purple belt. And I looked, and I'm like, oh, man, this dude is in my weight class. And like, he was just scary. And we ended up going at it in the first match. I swept him, and then he swept me back, and the match ended with him on top. So I lost 2-2. And then we ended up going again in the same match. And I at that point, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to open up and attack him. I'm not going to be so cautious. You know what I mean? He wasn't that scary. He won, but it was 2-2. So I opened up, and then he knee barred me and fucked my knee up. So he was up 2-0 on me. And then we ended up going again at a Joe Moreira's tournament in Irvine at a 24-hour fitness. And it was we had a great match. I had him in the truck the whole time, but he had passed my guard early in that match. So he won 2-0. I couldn't get his back. You didn't get any points for the truck, and I couldn't put both hooks in, but it was a great match. It's on my DVD. And then we fought one more time, and I remember he said, I got a surprise for you this time, because he knew I was going to pull guard. He knew what side I was going to pull guard to. So what he ended up doing is, as soon as I pulled guard, he did like a flip over me, and he ended up passing my guard, and then I put him in half guard. And then, but anyways, the only reason I'm talking about Javi Vasquez is because he was my number one rival in jiu-jitsu, and I was always afraid of him. And but he ended up coming down with colon cancer, and he used the Gerson therapy. He went in there and had, I'm pretty sure he had stuff cut out of his colon, and then he had the Gerson therapy, which is just massive juicing every hour. You juice fresh juices, and then you mix that in with coffee enemas all day. Juicing, coffee enema, juicy, coffee enema, cleaning out that colon, juicing, coffee enema, and you do it like every day. It's super hard just to keep up that protocol, but he did it, and he's in remission. And it worked for him. It doesn't work for everybody, but it worked for Javi. And Javi's got a school. The school's thriving in Southern California. Javi Vasquez Jiu-Jitsu. It's called strike-based Jiu-Jitsu. He ended up fighting in the UFC and WEC, King of the Cage. He was a King of the Cage star. And, I'm here at CHIPSA not because I have cancer. I don't have cancer. I'm here at CHIPSA just for that, the Gerson therapy, the NADH. I'm trying to repair this 50-year-old body. 25 years of jiu-jitsu took its toll, and I'm inflamed all over the place. And at CHIPSA, they also have the top of the line, high level stem cell therapy there, and that's really why I'm at CHIPSA, is for the stem cell therapy. We inject it straight into my joints and through an IV. We went full blown, and that's why I'm there. And but I'm doing that Gerson therapy too. Even if you don't have cancer, that juicing and coffee enemas, are great for everybody. So I recommend that to everybody. I've never done an enema before, and that was it was hilarious. But it's going to be something that I do on a regular basis, and I recommend that to everybody.
What's interesting about Javi is, and I'd like to see exactly what he did, but it wasn't just one thing, right? If he did the surgery and Gerson theory combination, little conventional, alternative, that's the combination that I like people to be open to. I mean, if you can cut out a tumor, cut it out. Generally, cut the thing out. A lot of people see guys like Javi maybe get better and think, oh, it's just just the diet. No, it's a combination. It's a very logical combination, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, let's say it wasn't Gerson therapy. Let's just say it was a good diet with organic foods and surgery. That makes a lot of sense than going and having surgery for a colon cancer and then drinking a bunch of Coke. Yeah. And then, eating a bunch of fried foods or going to eat pizza. My aunt had uterine cancer, and she went conventional in the beginning, and she was drinking a bottle of wine at night after she was in remission, right? I told my mom and dad, she's not really in remission. I mean, it's just, they say remission, but it's not really remission with that type of cancer. It's going to come back, within 4 or 5 months. 2 months later, it's back. And, they told her, diet doesn't matter at all. It doesn't even matter. Don't even worry about it. But that's not logical to me. And Javi did Gerson therapy, but I'd just like to see, with a lot of these people that do surgeries, if they had a very healthy organic diet, how much better the response rate would. And that's where it's a very linear clinical trial. That's clinical trial's not even done because there's so many diets out there. It would have to be a very specific diet, this diet and surgery. Like that doesn't make sense. We have 35+% of people, I believe, that are obese in the United States. We know how to lose weight and still don't do it. So like the idea that people are going to do one specific diet in general if they have cancer probably doesn't make sense. But just general healthy diet and surgery, you probably get a bump. That's common sense. I can't prove that.
Yeah.
But it makes sense. And that's what I would encourage people to do is Gerson therapy, I look at it as a great adjunct diet. I believe it's the best adjunct diet you could have if you have cancer. But there's a lot of other things that are easier that almost everybody can do after surgery. I don't believe that diet doesn't matter at all. Imagine this. Or I don't believe that diet doesn't matter. I don't believe that the power of the mind doesn't matter. Imagine this. We're training a fighter for the UFC. And we say, you know what? Don't worry about your diet. Go drink Coke, go eat pizza, go eat fried food.
All that matters is the technique.
All that matters is the technique. Don't worry about the power of your mind. Don't worry about getting focused. And
all you need is rubber guards.
Yes.
Eat whatever you want. Rubber guard gonna make everything okay.
Yeah, we would be considered the worst coaches ever.
Yeah.
You don't do that. Don't worry about the power of your mind. Don't worry about your diet. Don't worry about these things that we know are important. We can't put our finger on how important they are. We can't prove how important they are. How would we ever prove that?
Yeah, exactly. And even if you had perfect diet and the technique was perfect, if your mind wasn't right, you're still going to lose.
It is, and for cancer, it is so underrated, the importance of the power of the mind. It could be the most important thing that there is. Could be.
Yeah.
I don't know. It could be. It's, when someone is faced with a terminal diagnosis, and we don't think about this because we don't deal with it every day. But when someone's faced with a terminal diagnosis, they're like, think about the impact that has on them. Fear, death, they might have kids, they might have, there's all of these things. House, money, all these things that what am I going to do? Like, oh my God, I'm dying. And it takes a toll on the mind. We should be focusing on getting them to a place where they're strong, where they're like, no, they're focused. How do we get them there? I don't know the exact way. How do we get them there? At CHIPSA, we have 3 psychologists and we have a power of the mind class. That's how much we believe in it. That's like, of course, we got to get the mind strong. And some people say like going to CHIPSA is like a spiritual experience because we focus on it so much. We bring them back to what's really important. Family, whatever faith they might have, their friends. I heard Nito Quibin say the 3 F's of success. What was it? 3 F's? Family, faith. It was a 3 F's of success were families. The 3 F's of success: fame, fortune. The 3 F's of significance: faith, family, friends. And that's what it is. Like when you're running a cancer, that's what it's about. People don't understand that, man. That's what it's about. That's what life is about. Eddie, I've known you for 20 years. I remember before you had a child and now. Before, you weren't all about family. That wasn't your thing. You got married, you love your wife, you had a kid, you're like, oh my God, I love this kid so much. You told me earlier, I tell him I love him so much, he's never going to think he's not loved.
No.
That's what it's about, man.
Yeah. My dad never told me he loved me, and I tell my son I love him multiple times. And it just like, he's like, I get it, Dad. I get him. Like if anything,
you're gonna get it.
You'll never ever say that your dad didn't tell you he loved you. I tell him all the time. Makes him he gets sick of it, frankly.
Well, and we feel weird when we tell people that we love them sometimes. Like not your son, but like other people. I tell people I love them all the time. Like, hey, I love you, bro. I text Scott last night. Hey, man, I love you.
You got to put bro or dog after that.
Yeah.
I love you, dog. You know what I mean?
It just depends. It just depends how close you are. Like I could tell Scott, hey man, I love you, bro. I think I said bro, but dog,
bro.
Yeah. But
bro's good.
It's,
Brother, love you, brother.
Yes, brother, man, love you, man.
How crazy is it though with us like imagine you're talking to doctors and scientists or whoever as, former fighters, you know what I mean? I never fought MMA, but I have plenty of fights, right? And your mind doesn't matter. What you're thinking going into the fight doesn't matter. Like what?
The mind, dude.
You go on there in the mat, you think you're gonna lose, you're gonna lose, right?
Yeah. It's weird how that works. Sometimes it works. It's like reverse psychology sometimes, because coming up, learning Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, in the beginning, the Brazilians we never been to Brazil, and it was a brand new sport. UFC just came out. We were under the impression, based on the stories we were getting from these Brazilians, that, Jiu-Jitsu was a national sport in Brazil, and they do Jiu-Jitsu in stadiums. So I was fucking terrified of competing against Brazilians as a blue belt and as a purple belt. If I knew I was competing against a Brazilian, I would just fold. I would just hold and fold. And Jean-Jacques Machado, my instructor, he couldn't stand that. He goes, listen, they're just regular people like you and me. I'm like, no, Jean-Jacques, they're Brazilian. They're the best. Their blue belts can beat American black belts. There were like 3 American black belts at the time or something like that. But I was just terrified of Brazilians. And that would mess my mind up. So I'm a blue belt. Joe Moreira's tournament wasn't the 24-hour fitness one. This was as a blue belt. And I'm looking at the brackets. There's paper. There's all these brackets taped to the wall. And I looked and I saw the first round who I was going against. I'm like, oh my God, a Brazilian. It was Cameron Earl, but to me, I saw that as Camarón RL. You know what I mean? So I'm like, oh my God, this guy's gonna crush me. I was so depressed. I'm like, God. Jesus Christ. My uncle came to see me, and I'm like, oh man, I was trying to get him to. I go, you're gonna be bored. This is gonna go on all day. If you could leave if you want, because I knew I was going against Camarón RL. I was like, this guy's gonna fuck me up, right? So we start going at it, and he could look Brazilian. He looked a little. He
played up the Brazilian angle.
He could definitely be Brazilian. Like he had a little, mixed breed kind of look. And we were going at it, and he was fucking me up. He was up like 8-0. I'm holding on. I'm surviving. I'm shaking. And then I heard his coaches speaking to him in English. I'm like, wait a minute. And then I heard him speaking English. I'm like, this guy's American. And I was like, oh, shit. So I put him in my guard, I locked the shoulder. I was going for his arm. He pulled out his arm, and I started attacking him. And then, boom, time was over. It was too late. Too little, too late. I snapped out of it. And that was my mind right there. And I remember that. I remember, man, the power of the mind. You could have your diet together. You could have your technique. But if your mind ain't together, and back in wrestling, this is, I wrestled 2 years in high school, and I was horrible. And I was wrestled at 119, and I was horrible, but I would get twisters, which in wrestling they're called guillotines. But when I started doing jiu-jitsu, the Brazilians started calling it the twister. Higgin and Jean-Jacques would call it the twister, and to me it was the guillotine. But there was already a guillotine. That was the front headlock, a choke. So it just became the twister against my will. So I didn't change the name for people. Jean-Jacques and Higgin did. And but anyways, I would do that in wrestling. I would do twisters in wrestling. And if I could pull off a twister, I would win. But if I couldn't get the twister, I would lose. So I would lose. But it was time for junior varsity CIF, like the finals, the county finals. And I had my spot. I was 119. But there was a guy named George who was a weight class above me, who would always beat my ass in wrestling practice, but he was heavier than me. He was in the next weight class, but he wanted to cut weight and take my spot for the CIF county finals. And I'm like, oh no. And I heard about that. He goes, yeah, George is coming down. He wants to come down and take your spot. And I'm like, oh my God, he always beats my ass. So we had to have a wrestle off. We had to wrestle off in the middle of the day for that spot. And I was just like, oh my God, this guy's gonna crush me. I was depressed. I want her to go to the finals. Now I'm not gonna make it to county finals. So we have our wrestle off, and he just whoops my ass. And I go, okay, I'm not going to county finals. But the day before, coach goes, hey, we need an alternate. at 119. Can you make weight? And all the time I'm like, I can make it. So I just, start spitting in my cup all day at school. All wrestlers just spitting in styrofoam cups. You lose weight by spitting all day. And did you wrestle in high school?
Oh yeah.
Oh, so you spit in cups?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So I went in as the alternate, and then right away they go, oh, a couple, you're in the tournament. The couple guys backed out or got hurt. I'm like, all of a sudden, I'm back in the tournament. And he was in the tournament too. So in high school wrestling, you could go against your own teammates.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Just like in Abu Dhabi, you have to battle your own brothers. So I didn't really care at that point. I was just like, just happy that I was in. I didn't expect to win or anything. And it was double elimination. So if you lose twice, you're out. So the first guy I went against, and this was Santa Ana High, and we had a decent wrestling team, bunch of Mexicans and stuff. Alex Nicochea and Jesse Barrios, they're the ones who taught me the twister, aka guillotine. No one else did it. They taught it to me because I was the weakest one on the wrestling team. So they go, we got to help this guy out. He's got to be a leg rider because he's too weak to play the power half Nelson game and all that stuff. But anyways, the first guy I went against, I had him in a twister. We fell back. I put the arm over my head. We fell back, but we fell out of bounds. Finally, I used all my energy to put him in a twister. Fell out of bounds. They started us again. I didn't have enough time to set it up again. I lost. So boom, I'm down one. If I lose the next one, it's over. So my next match, I go against a guy from Santa Ana Valley. He'll never forget this. He was up 2-0 with 15 seconds left to go. And it was over. And I had another move that I was really good at was when you start top bottom, and when you're on the bottom, their arm is around your waist. And if you could grab that arm, it's like you're doing a Kimura on that arm, and you roll. You roll and you could pin a guy. It's like a big money move. You know what I mean? Can you imagine you're on the bottom, the guy is behind you, and you can, instead of Kimura-ing him, you just trap that elbow over the elbow and you roll. And it's a flip. It's like a judo roll flip. And I was good at that one. So I was like 15 seconds left. His coaches, I'll never forget, they go, just hold him, you got this, just hold him. And the assistant wrestling coach who showed it to me, he got on his knees in front of me and we're ready to go. He was like, this is it, dude. This is it. 15 seconds, double elimination, you're out. I fucking pulled it off, dude.
Yeah.
Fucking pulled it off. Pinned the motherfucker in 15 seconds. It was fucking mayhem. I was like, ah! Yeah. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Glorious moment. Guess who my next match was against? George. My own teammate who beat my ass to take that spot. And I was so pumped up from that win. There was so much that I swear to God, I went against George, and in my mind, I physically told myself, you're an animal. Become an animal. You're an animal. You could be. I just had a glorious moment. And I beat George's ass. Beat him. And I was like growling and everything. I was like, rah, rah, rah. And I was just like an animal just going after him, and I beat him. And everybody was like, how come you didn't do that the other day? What's going on? I go, I don't know. I'm on fire. And that was the power of the mind.
Power of the mind.
I beat his ass.
Yeah.
Next match I lost. I went against a guy from Canyon High. They wrestle year round. They go to it's summer wrestling camps in Iowa. No one fucks with Canyon High School in Orange County. Guy whooped me like 15-2 or something like that. But I didn't give a shit. You know, I was just like, I beat George. I came from behind against Santa Ana Valley. I'm like, fuck yeah. And I'll never forget that. That was one thing that I always go back, and it's like the power of the mind, the power of the mind. It's all a state of mind. So. And another instance like that was as a blue belt, I would freeze, and if I go against a Brazilian, I still had problems. But then I started getting confidence, and then as a blue belt, I became pretty good. I went to Hawaii and competed at a tournament out there. I went against a Reagan Penn. Had him in a toe hold, but they said, you got to let it go, toe holds. I was doing toe holds at that point, but I did pretty good. I ended up getting silver. I had a couple wins, triangle win. I swept it. I had a kamikaze leg compression win and a triangle win. I was feeling pretty good. Lost to Reagan Penn in the finals, but it was still great. Jean-Jacques came back, and I came back to the States. Jean-Jacques gave me a purple. That's when I first got my purple. And then I got scared again. Oh my God, purple belt. I'm going to compete against purple belts. Oh my God. In the beginning, my first few matches as purple belt, I would lose. I would freeze. I would hold a guy in half guard and just didn't do anything. I went against a Brazilian named Eduardo Kill. Kill. He must have had like some kind of record, because a lot of Brazilians, they don't even use their last name. It'll be just like a nickname. You know what I mean? Shogun Hua or something like that.
Yeah.
But they'll do that with their last name. Like Eduardo Kill. I'll never forget that. I just held him in half guard the whole time. I was afraid to commit to any sweeps. I'm like, well, he's Brazilian. And then he choked me out with like 5 seconds left, put me to sleep from the half guard. And like a Darce choke thing, but with the collar. And I'm just, finally got my confidence as a blue belt. I get a purple belt, and then all my confidence drops again. So again, my mind is weak. And I got sick of, but every now and then I would have a good match, and to me a good match was I'd sweep a guy and hold him and I would win 2-0. So I remember showing, I was so addicted to jiu-jitsu, I would show my friends and family my jiu-jitsu matches. But I would always have to fast forward and explain what's going on. They're like, what are you doing? You're just laying there. I'm like, no, I'm going to win. Like, how do you win? You're just laying. And they were like boring matches. So everyone's like bored watching my match, but I'm like showing it to them. Like, look, I won. I got on. They go, how did you win? Because you like rolled and you won? Like you got on top? Like, and it was boring. And I'm like, you know what? I got to start making my matches exciting. I'm like, even if I lose, I just got to go for it, because I have so many matches on videotape that are so boring. They're just boring. A bunch that no one's ever seen. So anyways, my girlfriend at the time, I was a purple belt. I'm just, all these matches were so boring. She shows up. I get a new girlfriend. I'm in love. I'm head over heels in love with this one. I was deeply in love with this one. And she's videotaping a purple belt match, and that's adding more pressure. Now I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, there's so much pressure, and then I'm not even, I forgot the fact that I was going to go out and win or lose. I'm going to make it exciting, win or lose. No more boring matches. So I'm like, if I videotape, what am I doing videotaping these boring matches? It's like, I might as well burn the footage. These are horrible matches. So I got to go out there and make it exciting. But I forgot about that, because now my girlfriend showed up, extra pressure. Now she's videotaping. I'm like, oh man, what if I lose in front of my girlfriend? I'm going to feel like such a pussy. So I got that in my head now. Now I'm thinking about my girlfriend's videotaping. So I'm in this match. I'm not doing anything. I'm freezing. I'm just holding. I'm afraid to commit. I don't want to get tapped in front of my girlfriend. I'm just like, like in my head, I'm like, as long as I don't get tapped, and get embarrassed, fuck. And then with a minute left in the match, I'm like, what am I doing? Another boring match on video. My girlfriend's like this. She's bored right now. She's going, what is this guy doing? So right there, I snapped in my head. My head just snapped. And I attacked, and I just started firing like at the gym. I'm always on the attack at Jean-Jacques, but in competition, sometimes I was freeze. It would always be about, can I compete like I do at the gym, or am I going to freeze up and get all cautious? So then I snapped and just started, put him in full guard, started attacking, put him in a triangle, trying for an arm bar. He's in danger. Time ran out. He wins. So that was it right there. That was it. I said, you know what? From this point on, I'm going to try to put everybody in a twister. I'm going to do everything I can, and I'm going to put a DVD out on it. And that's what I ended up doing. Yep. So I said, you know what? No more. I'm just going to put twisters on. I'm either going to get them or I don't, but I'm going to collect all this footage and put out a tape. And there's a lot of, I think I got, I don't know how many I got. A bunch. I got a bunch. But there was a lot of matches where I didn't have enough time. Like I almost had him. I had him in the truck and then time ran out. Or I had him and the guy escapes. Or we start rolling and I almost had it, boom, almost get it, boom, time runs out. There's a bunch of those that no one has ever seen, like almost twisters. But I ended up, I don't know how many I had. But I put a DVD out called The Twister, like Scotty Nelson's brother, Cade Nelson, who ended up being one of my black belts. Super, genius with computers and editing and all that
Larry's,
stuff.
Remember?
Yeah.
You shot it at Larry's.
Yeah, but anyways, the point of all that was how important the power of the mind is, not only in jiu-jitsu or any sport or business, any kind of meetings, at so many levels of life, where every level of life really, the mentality, that's number one. Then the diet. Same thing with jiu-jitsu. Diet, important, jiu-jitsu. Mental health, important, jiu-jitsu. And then technique. What techniques you're using to beat cancer or to beat any disease. You know, it's the same thing. And that's what you're doing. You're doing some mixed martial arts with cancer. And it's an amazing thing, man. And when I call you a bad motherfucker, you and Scott, when I say you guys are bad motherfuckers, I mean that like you are... that means you're super ultra solid, honest, and you have a gigantic heart and endless motivation to do the right thing. And that's the most important thing in life. You know what I mean?
Thanks,
money
for that.
like I know this just from life experience, that I always try to put myself at 90 years old on my deathbed and thinking like, man, right now I'm living the memories I'm gonna have when I'm 90. So appreciate them, because if I was 90 and I was dying, and then all of a sudden, boom, I'm here, and I'm like in a time machine or some magical thing, like how would I feel? Would I feel like I'm feeling right now, or would I feel like 1,000 times better?
Yeah.
Imagine how you would feel if you got to be right here, right now, like, oh my God, look, how did this happen? How did I go back in time? Imagine how amazing you would feel.
Right.
And so if you're sitting around not appreciating that, you got to fix that. It would be almost impossible, really impossible, to feel like you would if you did come back in a time machine when you were 90. I mean, because imagine how you would feel. Imagine how you would feel, like how good the air would feel, how good that view of the ocean behind us. You'd be like, what? How? I'm back here. I get to do it again?
Yeah.
If you could, there's no way you could feel that way, but if you could somehow get like halfway there or as close as possible, you know what I mean? Like if someone switched lives, like if you were raised in a third world country in just shitty conditions, like a war-torn area, and all of a sudden you got your life, and you were like, boom, like you got this life. Like, can you imagine how good you would feel? Like, oh my God, my name's Ed Clay. I own a hospital, and I'm saving, I'm doing as much as I can to save lives and do the right thing. And, I got a house on the beach in Mexico, and imagine how you would feel. You would be jumping up and down, going, what?
Yeah.
And not just you, just like if you switch lives, and if you were someone who lived in Liberia, and all of a sudden you're just like a regular dude working at Starbucks in LA, how happy you would be. Like, oh my God, I'm working at Starbucks in LA, in Los Angeles. You would freak the fuck out. You would be jumping for joy. You would be so happy you were serving coffee at Starbucks.
Yeah.
But people are just walking around and they don't appreciate what they got.
There's a lot that we take for granted, and this type of stuff brings you really close to that, because it's like it's in front of you every day.
You know what makes you feel like that instantly?
What's that?
If you got thrown in jail, like for something you didn't do, like if like all of a sudden
Yes.
FBI raided your house and threw you in jail, and they go, dude, you're fucking going down, dude. You got your fingerprints all over this body, and you're like, what? Instantly, your life would be the greatest life ever. You're like, can I just get my life back? Can I just get my life back? Here's another thing I always look back at. I used to DJ at a strip club in my 20s and early 30s. And when I first started, I had the horrible shifts. Monday day, Saturday day, just dark, $50 a day shifts, and you have to work your way up to those Friday nights where you're gonna get like, $300-400,
Like, in a way, happiness is a choice. Like, how are you going to look at this? Good or bad? The glass half empty, or is it half full? I mean, there's a lot of times where, I'll catch myself having negative self-talk or negative thoughts, I'm like, wait a second. Like, let's
Snap
reframe
out of
that.
that.
Yeah. It's easy, man. Yeah. When I did ibogaine, I did ibogaine 3 times. And the third time, I'll never do it again. But I had a notebook next to me because I wanted to see what came. It's deeply introspective. And I wrote down, think before you think. That came to me. Think before you think. Like, what does that mean?
That's deep as fuck.
Yeah, think before
I'm not even
you
sure
think.
exactly what it means, but that's deep.
Yeah, I felt like I knew what it meant. Before you think of having a bad thought, like think about that. Don't think about it. Basically,
Yeah.
think before you think. And to me, that's true. I'm like, as soon as I'm thinking about having a bad thought, try to catch it.
Yeah.
And bring it back.
Yeah.
And I haven't perfected.
It's
by
so
any means.
hard. One of the hardest things in life is to actually appreciate your life for what it really is.
Yeah.
That's super hard. And going to jail, that is the quickest way to realize what you have. The moment you're in jail,
Yeah.
like that, you realize what you got. You're like, my life is amazing.
I mean,
I just want that thing back. And you know what? When you have nightmares and stuff, I used to, you hate nightmares. You're like, oh my God, I'd wake up in the middle of the night and have this horrible nightmare, some stressful situation or something, and you don't even want to go back to bed. I want to stay up for a couple hours, get on the internet, change my thought process, because if I go back to bed too quick, I'm going to go right back into that dream, and I don't want to do that. Let's change. I don't want to go through that. The crazy stuff, And I went to this crazy guy who claims the channel interdimensional beings. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I went to him, gave him like $200 or whatever. I just wanted to see if he had the answers to life. I was like searching. This was 2000 something, like 2011. And I went to him and just to ask questions, just to test him. I go, this guy fraud. This guy's just faking this shit. Let me see. So I would ask him questions. I go, explain nightmares. What are nightmares about? He goes, nightmares are very important. Because how do you feel when you wake up from a nightmare? I said, I feel relief. He goes, yes. The first thing you feel when you wake up is your appreciation for your life. You know what I mean? Because when you're having a nightmare, like you feel like you don't have any money, you just got fired. You're like, what am I going to do? I have no money. I just got fired. And then I wake up, I'm like, shh, I got plenty of money. I'm fine. You know what I mean? So it's like, you need that. Because when you wake up, you appreciate your life so much when you wake up from nightmares. I'm like, oh my God, I never looked at it that way. So now, like I appreciate nightmares. It's always me losing my job, and I never can figure out that I make money teaching jiu-jitsu, and I have a good job, and I'm like financially secure. I never figure that out in my dreams. In my dreams, I'm like, I just got fired, and what am I going to do? How am I going to pay the rent? I don't even remember where my house is. Like, my wife's leaving me. Where are they? Where's my son? Where did he go? And I wake up, I'm like, oh my God, I'm fine. Yeah, everything's beautiful. Yeah. Appreciate your nightmares is what I'm trying to say.
That's how it was with ibogaine. It's called the awakened dream. So you're awake while you're dreaming, basically, and your eyes are closed because you can't really. You can open your eyes, but it's really bright. But you close your eyes and you go into REM. So your eyes are fluttering while you're wide awake, and afterwards, like, man, it's great to be out of this. Thank you. Yeah, you can definitely appreciate life a lot more.
Yeah.
And it kind of takes you down those rabbit holes of dreaming while awake, being conscious of it, remembering some of those things. If you have like a notepad, you write the things like, oh wow, that's pretty interesting. But there's a profound amount of gratitude when you're done.
Do you get, like, what kind of resistance do you get from, because obviously your approach to cancer treatment is unorthodox and out the box. Like, what kind of heat do you get from, like, the establishment or, like, big pharma and the conventional people? Do they come after you in any way?
I think that, like, conventional people that don't know us or don't really understand what we're doing might, but I think once they look at the science behind what we're doing, that changes minds. It's kind of like this. So let's think about the early days of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for you. or the early days of the rubber guard. I remember you showed me rubber guard in a hotel room. I went back and practiced it in Nashville. You and I were at a King of the Cage.
And wait a minute. And also, didn't you were the first one? You may have been one of the first ones outside of California or Southern California that was a proponent of the rubber guard and believed it, because most people thought back then that it was garbage, it was trash. It's like, what is this rubber guard thing? And I remember I was so like proud of the fact that you were out there in Nashville, and you called me and you said, I'm showing this to Mike Pyle.
Yep.
Mike Pyle.
Yeah,
he
Mike
was
Pyle
your
was your-
student.
yeah.
And he did like a little rubber guard early in his career. And I remember you telling me that, and I was like, whoa, there's a guy in Nashville doing rubber guard. And I was like losing my mind over that
Yeah,
shit.
Mike Pyle was training. I showed it to him, and I was showing everybody. I think that a lot of people get. It reminds me of kind of medicine, where there's times where it's very closed-minded. You know, it's like not open to possibility. But when you open up to possibility and you see rubber guard and you're being honest with yourself, and you've never seen something like that before, it just makes sense. I mean, you're able to break the person's posture. You can throw some strikes.
They can't hit you.
They can't hit you. And if they don't know what you're doing and you're good at it, most likely you're going to submit them because they've never seen it before. And it's evolved a ton since then. But I mean, even back then, I was
Back then
whoa.
it was like meat hook. It was really simple.
Like
meat
4
hook
things, I
triangles.
think. Yeah. And so we're in. It's like that. So we're in at the King of the Cage, and we're sitting at this bar having a couple drinks, and
At a miniature golf
It was a hotel with a miniature golf course
in Palm Springs.
Yes.
It was Palm Springs.
Yes.
That's right.
And Quincy Rice was there.
He was a judo guy who was really into leg locks.
Yeah, he was pretty good. And we were talking about rubber guard, and he was kind of dogging on it. And and Eddie is like, you were like, Ed knows rubber guard. Like, go ahead and try it. Let's see. And I was like, oh shit. Maybe I'm not that great at it.
Yeah, we had been drinking.
Yeah.
We were on a golf course in the back of this hotel, and there was a miniature golf course
Yes.
with a bar. We were drinking. Quincy Rice was, he basically was talking shit on, because even
Everybody.
at that point, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was still blossoming,
Yeah.
and the American judo guys were saying, "Oh, it's just judo. You guys, you think you got some new style and all that, but it's in judo. We've been doing all this. It's just judo." Meanwhile, the real judo players in Japan were going to Brazil to learn this new form of judo, which was
Right.
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. The Japanese had no problem going, "Oh, this is new. We got to learn this." But American judo players were like, "It's judo. It's nothing different. It's nothing new." And then and they were still struggling with just regular Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So when rubber guard started peeking its head out, Quincy Rice was like, "That's garbage."
Yes.
And then what happened?
Yeah. So we go to the golf course, and I put him in.
On the golf, we just decided
yeah.
to test it.
Yes.
I said, let Ed Clay put you in
Mission control.
Yeah, mission control, and then see if you can get out.
Yes. And so, we're in that position, and he kind of spikes me on the course, and it kind of jolted open, and he pops up, and he starts throwing bombs at my head. And I'm like, that was unexpected. It's like throwing bombs. I cover up. He falls down to a heel hook, taps me out. I was like, man.
Yeah.
And Eddie's like, oh, hold on a second. I got this.
Hold
Come
my
on,
beer.
man. Come on, my beer. Come on, man. He's like, come on. And so I hold Eddie's beer, and he proceeds to destroy Quincy Rice. I mean, it was really bad. And then
I got him in a go-go plata, and then he ended up like throwing up afterwards.
Now, you tapped him like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
It was destruction. And then somehow you guys ended up in a fountain swimming.
Yeah. And then he threw up. He threw up. He was like,
he puked. Yeah. It was,
in his defense, he was really drunk. You
Sure.
know what I mean? And he had no idea how to defend. I was playing rubber guard every day, and so it was like it was just a crazy night.
It's just funny. He was actually really good. I saw him in a Grappler's Quest tournament, and he destroyed some really good people.
Yeah.
But my point to the whole thing is, keeping an open mind, open to multiple possibilities. That's what you did. And when people are closed-minded, they're like, no, I don't need to learn this. Think about this. Think if Hoyler's team would have been open to the fact that your style works. They completely said it doesn't. They dismissed you. So many people have dismissed you. You're probably the top American jiu-jitsu guy of all time now.
No.
That's how I consider it. Like, as far as what you've accomplished, I believe that. I mean, maybe there's guys that have competitively been better, but like, as far as what you've accomplished, you've changed an entire sport. Going against the grain, you had so many people against you.
And even today, because back then there wasn't that much evidence that rubber guard worked, or even like the lockdown system, or even the truck system. There wasn't that much evidence. But nowadays, I've created so many rubber guard assassins. You go to Instagram, follow rubber guard assassins, and it's all over the world. There's rubber guard going on everywhere. And like Jeremiah Vance, one of the best rubber guard players ever, Ben, Eddie, Richie Boogeyman Martinez. If they put me in rubber guard, I just immediately go to my back and let them mount me. I'd rather have them mount me, because they're gonna fuck you up. And there's like a 50% chance you're gonna tap. That's high for any kind of guard. Most guards are 10% you're gonna tap. If you put all the data together in the UFC,
right,
about all the times people were in close guard, and then that turned into a submission, I'd say 2%, 3%.
Sure.
So does that mean full guard doesn't work?
Oh,
I don't know.
gosh.
But so if you have
That's
a
so
guard
good.
that works 20% of the time, like 20% of the time they tap, that's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge. My guys, I say 50% of the time you're in their full guard, you're going to tap. 50%. That's high. 50% you'll get out. All guards don't work all the time. So, but even though now there's so much evidence, like, this Grace Gundrum just destroys girls with rubber guard all over the place. Jeremiah at Worlds tapping dude. I mean, it's all over the place. It's all documented. Even now, if you took 20 Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts, traditional, and you lined them up, and you asked them all to give you data like, does rubber guard work? They'll say no. Does rubber guard work? No, it's trash. Even today. So, the experts, and I would consider, if you consider boxing a science, they call it sweet science, then jiu-jitsu is definitely a science. I mean, it's the scientific principles are all over the place in jiu-jitsu. Leverage, balance, base, weight.
It's more chaos-based,
centered, being centered. Yeah. It's all science, right? So you can consider a black belt being a scientist, or an expert scientist in the art of jiu-jitsu, and still 90%, maybe 95% of all Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts will say rubber guard don't work. So there's a clear example of, just because the consensus is not science. That's
right.
Proof consensus is not science.
Well, and being open to possibility, like what you're saying, like, is kind of how I look at where we are with cancer therapy. So the first chemotherapy was mustard gas. It was approved, I believe, in 1948. And they were using it for, I believe, lymphoma patients, seeing the white blood cells drop. And they thought that somehow, since the white blood cells were dropping and it was working for lymphoma, which is more of a blood cancer, that it would work in solid tumors. It was wrong. Chemotherapy does not work in stage 4 cancer for solid tumors. Well, when I say it doesn't work, you're not going to get a cure from it in solid tumors. So, but look at where we're at with where are we today? If you take out testicular cancer, lymphoma, and leukemia, 2 blood cancers and a testicle cancer. And I randomly chose 10 solid tumor cancers from the SEER U.S. government database and looked at the 5-year survival of stage 4. It was about 13.5%, 5-year survival of stage 4 cancer, 10 random solid tumors. That's not that good. So I'm like, well, if it's 13.5%, what if we can get to 20%? What if we get to 25 or 30%? We're double by the time we get to 30% where we're at right now. And then when can we get to 50%? So it's like these incremental things. What if having a powerful mind bumps you up 5%? What if getting on a good diet bumps you up 5%? Well, now that 13.5% is up to 23.5% just by mind and diet. So that to me is common sense. That's common sense. But it's the same approach, being open-minded as it was for you in jiu-jitsu. It's the same thing. Be open to possibility. As we were, and when I say we, humans were so closed off to possibility with cancer for so long. I mean, there's like major people that were the heads of FDA in the early 80s that were saying chemotherapy is the only thing that we're going to be using. That's crazy. Like, why? Why do you just want to use this poison? I mean, if it worked, I could see it. But in the 80s, the clinical trials that they would do, they would load people up with the chemo. And somehow they really thought it would work. It's easy now, 30 years later, to say how wrong that was. You know, then I'm sure they were just in that zone, you know. But you got to be open to possibility. The more scientists become open to possibility, the better chance we have of making real breakthroughs. And if they would understand they don't have to be right every single time with their singular idea, the idea that one singular treatment is going to work, I don't believe that's correct. I'm open to the possibility, by the way, but to me, it's not logical. It's going to be a combination of things. And, you know, when we start mixing them in and using logic, like, think about this. The FDA was formed, I believe it was 1952. Watson and Crick discovered the double helix in DNA in 1952, 1953, so 62, 53. There were no genetic tests back then when the FDA was formed. You know, now we have genetic testing. We have precision medicine. We have we have a logical way of predicting what will work and what won't work. It's not perfect. They're looking for perfection. That's the thing that drives me. They're looking for perfection. It's not perfect. I understand it's not perfect. You can't predict every single time, but what is perfect?
Exactly. That's exactly how I feel about, again, back to rubber guard. I preach this constantly. You can't just have a dangerous rubber guard, and you got to have a bunch of other games. You got to have a leg lock game too, because sometimes you just can't put a guy in full guard. He's so worried about your rubber guard. Now you got to go attack his legs and threaten his legs so much that he falls into guard. So you're using the leg locks to set up your rubber guard entries. Or you can't rubber guard everybody. Some guys out there just have insane posture. I got a couple students where their posture is just crazy. DBZ, man, you can't get him in rubber guard, so you need half guard with him. You got to sweep him. So I always preach, it's not just rubber guard. You got to have De La Hiva, reverse De La Hiva. We practice all that stuff. Deep half, X guard, lock down, leg locks. You got to have it all, and that all helps your rubber guard. And it's all going to work together, because some of my guys, they come up and they're just pure leg locks, or they're pure rubber guard. I'm like, if you're pure leg locks or pure rubber guard, you're gonna hit a brick wall. You got to have multiple styles that work off each other, and when one fails, you have entries to the next one. You can't, like, for me, the styles I choose obviously are the lockdown game and rubber guard game. And I'll threaten leg locks. I'll go after leg locks just to set up a lockdown. Throw leg locks at them, boom. They're stopping the leg locks right into my lockdown, boom. Or they stop leg locks right into full guard, boom. And I'm huge on top game and passing and mounting. It isn't all about twister and just truck. No, you got to have a death mount, and you got to have death back control. But you also have to have a death truck, because you can't choke everybody. Some guys that have that rear naked choke defense, you're just going to be on their back and time runs out, when that last minute you should have transitioned to either spider web or the truck. So in the same sense, it's not just one thing. You can't just have one thing.
No,
you gotta have multiple games, and they all work together.
And then when you get at that level where you're doing all these different things, in the end, it still might not work.
Exactly. And people say this crazy with rubber guard. You'll see like in the UFC every now and then, you'll see a guy try rubber guard, and a guy pulls out and go, look, it doesn't work. And I see this all the time. We're talking about things that work all the time. I tell people this all the time. I go, you're looking for a guard that works 100% of the time?
Let me know.
Nothing works 100% of the time.
Where's the knockout punch that works 100%?
Yeah, where is this guard? You guys have, I go, what traditional guard? How often does that work? Like, when does that work? We already know it doesn't. It works at a very low rate. And all I did when I first opened a school, all I wanted to do, I didn't want to change the gi community, I just wanted to add to it. I thought not enough people, there wasn't anybody that was focusing on an MMA bottom game, whether it's half guard, rubber guard, X guard, deadlift heel, all that, like, it was so underdeveloped, only in my opinion, because, and I think we're finding out that it's a fact now, that if you're training in the gi and your fighting stance is grabbing collars and grabbing sleeves, I've talked about this many times, and there's no punches, what happens when you take those handles away and then you add punches and elbows and then bodies are all greasy and slippery? You think that's the same? If you think that's the same, you are not paying attention, because in MMA, there is no guard that's working at a high rate. So all I'm saying is, let's raise the percentage. Like, if we could develop a guard or a bottom game that works 20% of the time, then that's huge. But as soon as someone pulls out a rubber guard, it doesn't work, go. Dude, I could show you endless footage of traditional closed guard in MMA that doesn't work. Yeah. I could show you, it could last for days straight, no commercials, straight. So what are you talking about? A guy pulls out a rubber guard. Guys pull out a rubber guard. Guys pull out a leg locks. Or a guy pulls out a leg locks that doesn't work. Oh, no, red leg locks. How about a guy sprawls on a double leg? Oh, that doesn't work. Right. Can you imagine if a guy in a fight took 10 shots, 10 double, and dude sprawled and stuffed all the takedowns? Right. Not one person would ever say, you know what? Double legs don't work. Yeah. They would never say that.
But that's
they would understand the matchup. You know, he needs more work, and this guy's probably too good at sprawling. That's all it would be. But when it comes to rubber guard, they go, no, it didn't work. No, it didn't work. No, it didn't work. You guys are not thinking right. Yeah. You're not thinking right. I'm trying to improve the percentage. Nothing is going to work all the time. Yeah. But I'll tell you this much. In MMA, they say, oh, pulling guard is suicidal. You pull guard, you're going to get fucked up on top. How come guys with rubber guard can't just sit on their butt and have guys go on their guard? How come if pulling guard is so suicidal, how come for rubber guard players it's really hard to do? You got to really time that guard pull, because they won't go in your guard. Right. No one's going to go right into Vinny Magalhaes' guard. No, he's got to trick them and set up the guard pull. He's got to push them against the fence, and as they push back, he jumps guard. Because if he just sits on his ass, if it was so suicidal like everybody thinks, that's horrible. Why doesn't the guy just get in his guard? Because they know that's a dangerous guard, right? Right?
Anderson Diaz.
Exactly. You know, so it's the same thing. You know, it's like consensus is not science.
No, consensus is not science. And I think it's important. The whole thing in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as it evolves, in mixed martial arts as it evolves, in cancer therapy, anything as it, like, you got to be open to possibility. The more we're open to possibility, the faster we'll get those gains. Those that are closed off to possibility are dead.
And like you said, if there was no resistance to what I was trying to do, I had like a project, Operation Let's Fix the Bottom Game in MMA. Because Jiu-Jitsu didn't get me into MMA. Right. Jiu-Jitsu didn't get me into the UFC. The UFC got me into Jiu-Jitsu. So when I was in Jiu-Jitsu, I love the UFC. I go, we're wearing these jackets. How come the only one who's wearing a jacket is Hoist? He's the only one. How come Hickson's not wearing a jacket? How come Nogueira's not doing a jacket? And everyone say, if you're not wearing a jacket, you're not doing jiu-jitsu. And I'm like, okay, so that means Hoist is the only one who used jiu-jitsu in MMA history? He's the only one?
Right.
Hickson never used jiu-jitsu when he won. Nogueira never used jiu-jitsu. They're not wearing a gi. That's not jiu-jitsu? What is that? What are they doing? I want to do what they're doing. It's something else. So people just aren't using their brain. So imagine where the state of MMA bottom game would be if everybody jumped in and helped me instead of everybody resisting. Yeah. There's guys out there that were raised in schools where if they play rubber guard, they will get shunned and shamed. So that's why there's a lot of guys out there that want to play, but they won't play. You know why? Because as soon as they shoot fire that mission control, it validates me and it makes me somehow look good, like I was right. So they won't do that. They won't even play rubber guard. There's so like Jermaine Der Andre, I forget her name, the girl that just fought Amanda Nunes. Man, if she knew rubber guard, it would have been, and if she was high level with it, it would have been a slightly different fight. She had Amanda Nunes in guard, full guard, several times, and could have easily went and started attacking. Amanda Nunes may have slipped out and limped arm out of an omoplata or whatever. That's normal.
Sure.
But there would have been some fire. There would have been some danger. And I'm positive that her instructor, whoever her instructor is not a proponent of the rubber guard and doesn't believe in it and probably thinks it's trash because she wasn't doing it. And she had many opportunities to attack with it. Imagine where the bottom game, the state of the bottom game in MMA would be if there wasn't a resistance to it and everyone just jumped in, and all the Brazilians and all the schools are like, yeah, you know what? Let's improve jiu-jitsu because we'll all win.
Right.
We'll all win. If the bottom game evolved into some dangerous thing where nobody even wanted to get on top of anybody on the bottom, it was like, you got to watch your ass, be careful. Man, jiu-jitsu everybody would benefit from it. Everybody would make more money from it, get more students from it. Jiu-jitsu would be way stronger, but they're resistant to it to this day.
I mean, I was actually going to ask you, like, the whole from when we started jiu-jitsu, you just said, like, UFC got me into jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu tournaments, especially no-gi tournaments, were like the pre-Vale Tudo, pre-MMA. You went and, got your chops in a jiu-jitsu tournament. But now it feels like jiu-jitsu has come so far away from even wanting to be a martial art, wanting to be a fight science.
Yeah.
You were talking about.
It's like, it's a, don't get me wrong, gi jiu-jitsu, it's a beautiful thing. It's like chess. You know what I mean? It really is. It's a prestigious, beautiful, technical, maybe not entertaining for people that don't do jiu-jitsu. They probably don't get it and the points and all that and so complicated. But for people, it's a niche thing. And it's like chess, exactly. Like you can't have chess on network television. You can't have chess on pay-per-view. You know what I mean? It's still a beautiful thing and still a prestigious thing. Chess, you can never talk shit on chess, but you just can't put it on pay-per-view. You know what I mean? So that's the way I look at gi jiu-jitsu. It's a beautiful thing for people that train jiu-jitsu. I respect the hell out of it. But what I'm trying to do is something different. I'm trying to add to the world of jiu-jitsu, and I've been doing this since day one, trying to improve jiu-jitsu in the cage and self-defense, trying to continue to develop bottom game when there's strikes coming, and that's why combat jiu-jitsu was born, so that we could just collect data on what jiu-jitsu positions are the best and most important when strikes are added. That's what combat jiu-jitsu is about, because we really don't have that much data, as much data as we should in MMA these days anymore, because most fights end up just being kickboxing. They're not even on the ground that much anymore. Sometimes they're on the ground for 30 seconds, and then there's still stand-ups, and there's some rounds. There's a lot of rounds, like a large percentage of rounds where there's zero groundwork. So, and with all the stand-ups, you don't really need to get that deep into jiu-jitsu to rise in the ranks in the UFC. Striking is the most important thing in the wrestling. There's a lot of guys out there with super basic vanilla jiu-jitsu, and that's great, and they're like champions, and they don't really even need that much jiu-jitsu because most of UFC fights are on the feet these days because of the rules and the format and all that. So that's why I feel combat jiu-jitsu is really important, because we don't have, like in UFC, they have stand-ups. In combat jiu-jitsu, we have get-downs. You're only allowed 1 minute on your feet, and we get you down. We want data. We want what are the best, and we're seeing it. We're seeing it. The most. Here's a one gigantic hole in jiu-jitsu in regards to jiu-jitsu for like street purposes, like practical purposes, which are like MMA as well, because MMA is the closest you can get to a real fight in any sport. You can't get closer to a real fight than MMA. That's not a real fight, but it's as close as you can get. Combat jiu-jitsu is jiu-jitsu where strikes are legal on the ground, palm strikes are legal on the ground. And we find out real quick that the most popular, most common guard position in jiu-jitsu history, where there's no strikes, just pure jiu-jitsu, whether it's gi or no gi, the most popular position is just basic Z guard. You got your shield up, protecting your neck. Everyone just puts the shield up. It's like a shield, and you got your sword. It's like you're a warrior, and you put that shield, that Z, to keep them away from your neck. Right, that's the main thing. But in MMA, that is the most dangerous position on the bottom. You can get punched and hit, and we're seeing that in combat jiu-jitsu. You can't just throw a Z guard, and if that's what you do, because most of your jiu-jitsu time or all of your jiu-jitsu time is spent training jiu-jitsu without strikes, you're just going to naturally go to a Z. That's going to be your start. Don't let them pass the guard. Put Z guard. Put your shield up. Don't let them pass. Wait for the right time to set up your sweep or your attack, whatever it is. But you can't do that when there's strikes. So all of a sudden, your whole game changes. And when there's strikes, you got to get rid of that shield and get in deep close, tight and clinch so they can't punch you, or kick them away. Kick them away or get in tight. That in-between Z guard, which is, again, the most popular, common guard position ever in the history of jiu-jitsu, is the most dangerous position when strikes are added. So that's one of the things that we learned right away in combat jiu-jitsu is like, you can't really play that guard. You gotta, so if reality, practicality is important to you, self-defense, if that's important to you, then you got to really think about that and address that situation. And that's what we're doing with 10th Planet, addressing that. That's not going to help you. That's going to, if that's your go-to, like you just sit back and you put a shield up, in reality, you're going to, in a street fight, if you end up on your back and you just go to shield, that guy who played football, he never even did martial arts, he's going to be throwing bombs on you. In Z guard. He don't know he's in a Z guard. He just knows that your face is right there and he's going to punch you. And you're going to get, trust me, you're going to get in there and you're going to clinch. So my philosophy is when you're training jiu-jitsu, have that in mind. So you got to get good at the clinching style. Clinching, moving in the clinch. So as long as you got a clinch and you got paths from the clinching and moving in the clinch, if there was punches or strikes, you know, even though there's not, but if there was, you're already playing the right game. You're playing the same game. You're not going to play a different game. You're playing one game. Like if there was strike, we already know that. We know the data. We see the data. So get in there and clinch and just know that if you're playing Z, I'll play Z every now and then when I'm just rolling jiu-jitsu. But I know that this is, I got to get out of here. We got to make a move because you can't just stay here because you get fucked up.
It's like you're searching for real answers. You know, one of the things Michael says is it's not that we can't figure out the solutions to the problems, is that we're asking the wrong questions. What questions should we be asking?
Yes.
You know, and that you ask the honest questions in jiu-jitsu. You're like, what is it? What the point of guard is to do what? You know, in MMA, if you're on your back in a fight, what's really the best thing? What's holding us back? And it's asking the right questions. I mean, I think that we go through life a lot of times looking for solutions for the wrong questions, and we get kind of stuck in this hole. Like, oh, we got to ask this question. This is the question that we're trying to solve. Think about how many times we're solving the wrong question, and so you ask the right questions, and you're finding solutions.
Yeah, and you know, when it comes to cancer, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, the similarities again between jiu-jitsu, fighting, and cancer. There's so many parallels. It's incredible, really. Is this correct or incorrect? Where maybe like the conventional approach to treating cancer would be, gotta have chemo. Chemo's the base. You gotta have chemo. Then you could add, you know, a little bit of the alternative stuff. But you know, you're not gonna beat cancer unless you have the chemo, right? Are there people that say that? Is that a thing that exists? Like chemo first, traditional first.
Yeah,
and right,
it is.
Right?
Yes.
So in jiu-jitsu, it's kind of the same thing. Because when I first came out, I was saying, train in the gi all you want, but you don't need the gi if you don't want it. We started training no gi right away from day one. We never had a gi, and the resistance right away. And it's more than just rubber guard. It's more than that debate. It was a gi, no gi debate. So the traditional jiu-jitsu world would say, in order to get no gi, good at no gi, you have to train with the gi,
Yep.
which you have to train with the jacket in order to get good at no gi. Right, and they would just say, look at all the Abu Dhabi champions, the no-gi champions. They all come from the gi. That's all we need to know. And I didn't look at it that way. I thought like, yeah, because all the guys in Abu Dhabi train in the gi. Yeah. And we haven't had time to compare, a lifetime of no gi versus a lifetime of gi, then you let them go. It's going to take time to really see the truth. But at that point, early 2000s, they're like, look at what's going on. Everybody in Abu Dhabi, all the champions, they all come from the gi. If you want to get good in no gi, you have to train in the gi. So it was like imperative that there's no way you get the gi. Basically, the gi makes you better no gi. So if the gi makes you better no gi, then that would mean, in a logical sense, if you're thinking with logic, that the more you train with the gi, the better your no gi would get. And if you stop training in the gi, then your no gi would start to deteriorate, right?
Right.
Right. If weightlifting and strength and conditioning helped your game, which it does, if you stop your strength and conditioning, that would weaken your game, right?
Yep. Right.
You have to keep doing strength and conditioning, because if strength and conditioning is good for your game, whatever game you do, if you stop doing it, then it's going to weaken your game, right?
Right.
Otherwise, it doesn't mean shit. You can't just stop your strength and conditioning and say, I already did it, so now I don't need it no more. I already did it. I don't need it. No, it's something that you have to keep doing or you will lose it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So if the gi makes you better no gi, if you stop training in the gi, then your no gi game should go down, right?
Right.
So what ended up happening is over time, we started the first change in philosophy came from Marcelo Garcia. We first heard it. He's the first one. He goes, you know what? I train gi, no gi, 50-50. I'm like, oh, really? According to gi makes you better no gi, it'd be better 90-10, wouldn't it? Okay. So he's first said that. And then, of course, I agree with that. And then he also started saying, to get good at no gi, when you train with the gi, try to use as many no gi grips as possible. So when you take the gi off, your game doesn't change that much. I'm like, oh, that's what I've been saying. Right? But if but that goes against the gi makes you better no gi. So now you're slowly morphing into a no gi game, right? You start to see this, and then the big one was, the big one, after the whole Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu community coming down on me for trying to improve no gi. And I'm not talking shit on the gi. I'm just saying, dude, if your fighting stance is that collar in the sleeve and every technique, if you teach every technique and you say grab this and grab that, that's important right there. You're grabbing this and grabbing that. That's part of the steps. And start step 2, step 3, step 4, and then all of a sudden there's no gi. Where's your steps at? Where it's not the same. It's totally different. But they kept saying it was the same. And then the big one hit. Roger Gracie, 10-time world champion in the gi, started doing MMA, fought in the UFC. He made a public statement and said 80% of BJJ is useless in MMA. 80% of BJJ is useless in MMA. Quote, on the underground, he made the quote. I'm like, now what? Now what? That's your boy. Your number one boy is saying that. He said that word for word, verbatim.
Yeah.
And then the next hit, Rickson Gracie.
Oh.
He didn't say 80-20. He said 70-30.
Oh.
He said 70% of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu doesn't work in real fights. That's what he said.
And these are the ultimate meat and potatoes, basic. They're not berimboloing people.
Yeah.
They're not doing any of these fancy,
Although I
pass
do
the
like
gi
berimbolo,
around, blah, blah,
I
blah.
go, there's room
You
for
know?
that. But now it's like, now what? Now what are you going to say? Now what? But they, you know what they did? They still held on. They ignored that. They ignored who was saying it. Hodger and Rickson. They ignored it. The Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu community. Because it was validating what I was saying. And the last thing, the people running the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu community at the top, the last thing they want is for me to be right. Right? And they ended up being wrong. And then so they kept saying, who's winning Abu Dhabi? Who's winning Abu Dhabi? It's the gi guys. That's all you need to know. Who's winning Abu Dhabi? Now, what's up with Abu Dhabi? Look, who were the biggest stars in the 2019 Abu Dhabi? Gordon Ryan, Gary Tonin, Lachlan Giles, my guy John Thor Blank. He got to the Final Four. Elvira Carpenter. She trains in the gi too, but she trains mostly no gi. Craig Jones. Those guys don't train in the gi.
Right.
And they started in the gi, and they every now and then they train in the gi. But remember, if the gi makes your no-gi game better, if you train in the gi just a little bit, or you stop training in the gi, your game should be going down, right? When have you seen Gordon Ryan with a gi? Is there like 2 pictures of him with a gi on? Maybe he competed as a purple belt with the gi. You know what I mean? John Thor Blank, he's never put a gi on. Gio Martinez went to 3 Abu Dhabis. First year in 2015 he got to the Final Four. He doesn't put the gi on ever. Maybe twice he put on a gi. And he was that first day of Abu Dhabi 2015, Gio was the fighter of the tournament so far. He never trained in a gi. He's in there. You know what I mean? I have, my guys never put on a gi at headquarters. We got gi guys coming through, and they should be like wrecking my guys when they come through, because we never have it. They should just come in and just decimate all. They should just like destroy everybody. But the opposite happens.
Right.
Guys come into my gym, the opposite happens. What's going on with ADCC? Think about Gary Tonin. When have you ever seen Gary Tonin with a gi on? You know, what was that?
He has in the past.
No, he has.
Last one I can remember was the Kumite.
Yeah, but again, if the gi makes your no-gi game better and you stop training in the gi, he basically stopped.
Oh, I know.
It should fuck your game up according to that logic. They're just. You're talking about ego? You talking about ego?
Oh, yes, that's it.
That's what's going on.
Yeah, no, it's
ego. Ego destroys. Evolution.
Progress, yeah.
Ego destroys evolution. Absolutely. I was thinking about all the correlations, and with what you're saying with chemo. I don't think that you throw chemo out completely. They're so.
I don't think you throw the gi out. Gi equals chemo.
Gi equals chemo.
I mean, think about this. So, like, they like doing full blown chemo. I mean, horribly high doses of chemo that make people really sick.
Train the gi 3 times a day.
Yeah. We use about 20% chemo to cause a danger signal. We're using it to cause damage. And then the idea is that we send in the immune system. It's logical. I think history will prove us right as far as what we know right now. I think history will prove us right as far as the evolution that we're at in the world right now. The evidence is out there too. This is what's amazing. There's a Sylvia Fermente and Sandra Di Maria, 2 brilliant scientists, radiation oncologists. I believe they're both radiation oncologists. They used radiation at different doses, and they gave something called GM-CSF. And they would, let's say that they were radiating a shoulder, and they would get responses in the leg as well. If there was a tumor in the leg, let's say they had tumor in the shoulder, tumor in the leg, they radiate the shoulder, they get a response in the leg. The evidence is out there that the antigen presentation, well, this is known, the antigen presentation is real. You can radiate one part and get a response in another part. And these are mainstream scientists that every radiation oncology should read their work, and we should be doing this, in my opinion, but it's not being done. Point being, the evidence is even pointing to it. The evidence is out there. People are really searching. I mean, read their studies. They have a number of, so read their studies on human patients. What's going on? Lower doses, not throwing everything out. It's lower doses, logical. You're using logic with the jiu-jitsu methods. This is what they're using, logic. We're using logic. When we have scientists oncologists come to CHIPSA and they see certain results, they're like, whoa. And of course, it's anytime you're able to shrink a tumor, it's impressive without conventional methods. We're using pieces of conventional therapy, but and you can see their minds opening up, more and more. And then there's some that have been in the system a long time. They're like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. Check this out. There's something called translational medicine. So back in the 1950s and before, it was translational medicine. Doctors were scientists. Scientists, they would see a result and they would go and they would put it into their practice. And then as time has gone by, translational medicine has gotten farther and farther apart. Like the bench to bedside approach it's not really that way anymore. Dr. Francisco Marancola, who's our chief medical officer for United Cancer Centers, he's also the editor-in-chief and founder of the Journal of Translational Medicine. He's trying to bring it back to where the medical doctor, the clinician, can be a scientist as well, and they can really have flexibility and use common sense. Like, common sense is almost out of is very much out in many ways when it comes to what I've seen, at least. But using these logical approaches, I saw this happen. Let me go make this adjustment. Oh, this doesn't really make. There's so much that doesn't make sense to us. Looking at it like, we're not doctors or scientists, so we're looking at this thing like
totally different.
Totally
Like, you're
different.
looking for results.
Yes.
When a scientist is hoping that his theory, he's like pushing for his ideas to be right. You're thinking about, okay, I'm just looking for whatever's right. I'm like, your ego is not involved.
Not at all.
Because you're like, whatever's right is good. Yeah, I'm looking for the right stuff.
Yes.
When each individual scientist is probably just hoping that their theory pans out, and they're like maybe jiving some of the data just so that they can be this guy who discovered this new technique.
Yeah, in general, that's how a lot of it is. I'm not saying necessarily that they all mess with their data, but in general, they want to be, a lot of them want to be right. And, and the good ones are really open-minded. Dr. Marancola, Dr. Liebman, Vijay Mahant, Dr. Mahant, they're so open-minded. It's so cool to talk to them. And I'll ask them. I was interviewing Dr. Liebman, and this guy, he's got a PhD in theoretical chemistry and protein crystallography, like crazy stuff. He's head of the Translational Medicine department of the Pharma Foundation. And I'm asking about GMOs. I just, on the podcast, like, hey, what do you think about this? And a very logical answer. He's like, I think we're asking the wrong questions. Which foods should we use GMO with and which should we not? Because GMOs have helped impoverished people in different countries. And for certain foods, it might be the only way you can get to them. But for a lot of the foods that we have, we might not need it. He's like, he tries to eat organic as much as possible. That's a logical, reasonable approach. But a lot of times it's like one side or the other. It's like, oh, we can't have, it's like ghee or no ghee. No, there could be a little mix. And maybe if you're going to do ghee, you need to train with a ghee. If you're going to do no ghee, you need to do mostly no ghee.
Exactly.
That's logical. But, people want to be right on their path. And it's a very linear path. This is the way it has to be done. It has to be done this way. Any other way is wrong. In Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you're a crianche. In science, you're a quack. That's what, but we know that's BS, man. We know that. Your jiu-jitsu is not bad, and you're not a crianche because you're doing what you do, and we're not quacks and bad because we're trying to find a better solution. We're trying to find we are truly going at this trying to find solutions to a very complex problem. And we do not have the answers. We do not know of a cure, but we're open to every possibility and idea. And it's so much like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and mixed martial arts. Like the correlations, it's amazing. But that's the approach. So
It's beautiful, man.
yeah, Scotch. Anything else we want to hit on here?
The only thing I never got to hear was the Nashville fight.
Ooh,
The Nashville
How to roll
fight
that in.
story.
how do we roll
That's a
that?
tough one.
Does it fit with this podcast?
No, maybe not.
What do you think, Edge?
I'm trying to it's a cool story.
The only thing we could fit in like this. I could say, okay, enough talk about cancer. We deal with it about every day. We could tell another couple. When was the first time you knew jiu-jitsu really worked? When was the first time you knew jiu-jitsu really worked? Like, what was the story where you had some dude fucked with you or?
Well, I was doing karate when I saw UFC 2, and that was the first time I didn't see UFC 1. I heard about UFC 1. I heard that this Iranian guy was grabbing people by the trachea and choking them out, I'm like, this Iranian, is he choking out karate guys? I was like balls deep in karate. And so when UFC 2 came out, I saw it on tape. I hated Hoist. He was like, it turned out it was a Brazilian guy, not an Iranian guy. And he was doing rear naked chokes, not grabbing the trachea. And I saw him just beat karate dudes, kung fu dudes, boxers. That he was, I couldn't believe this. I hated this guy. But by the time he got to the finals, and that was UFC 2 was the only UFC that had there was a 16-man tournament. They were all tournaments. The UFC 1 was an 8-man tournament. So was 3 and 4. But UFC 2 is a 16-man tournament. So we got to see Royce fight 3 times before he got to the finals. And the guy on the other side of the bracket who was decimating everyone was a kickboxer named Patrick Smith. And he just had like a super like cocky attitude. And I thought by the time they got to the finals, Patrick Smith and Royce, I was a fan of Royce. Because I was thinking, wait a minute. I never looked at wrestling as a martial art. I thought it was just like a form of one-on-one rugby or like one-on-one football. We're trying to tackle each other. I never thought like it was a form of martial art. Although I used it as a martial art, but I always thought it was cheating. Because I was a big pussy growing up, but I wrestled and I'm like, dude, I don't want to fucking throw fists with anybody. I'll get knocked out, but I'll just do a double leg. My fights, I would double leg dudes. My secret was double leg them, and then like I would hold them in side control and punch their stomach. You know what I mean? And then and then people would pull us off. I had a couple fights where I double leg dudes and took them down, and I thought I was cheating. I really did. I'm like, I'm a pussy, so I just wrestle this dude. And then I saw Royce. I'm like, so it's not being a pussy? You could just take dudes down and fight them. I'm like, I wonder if this is prehistoric wrestling or super advanced wrestling. I'm like, because he didn't fight a wrestler in UFC 2. So it was like, I wonder if this will work on a wrestler. Is it prehistoric wrestling or is it advanced wrestling? So, and by the time he got to the finals, he beat Patrick Smith, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna find a jiu-jitsu school. And there was a jiu-jitsu school in the Valley, but it was a ninjutsu school, but it said jiu-jitsu, but it was like jiu-jitsu. You know, there's different spellings of it. Yeah. And I didn't really even notice it. I just saw jiu-jitsu, and I showed up, and it was like a ninjutsu school. They had black gis, and they really never even got on the ground. And I asked the instructor, I'm like, how come you guys aren't on the ground? He goes, oh, you're thinking about that Gracie jiu-jitsu stuff. I'm like, really? He goes, yeah, they're cousins, the Machados. They teach here in the Valley. I'm like, he goes, you want me to give you their number? And I was like, no, I don't need their number. I don't need their. But in my head, I was like, Machado. So I looked it up, and they were under Carlos Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. So I was like, I was in the yellow pages, looking for Machado. I'm like, is it Mitch? Like Mitch Chado or Machado, M-U-M-A, couldn't find it. But then I found Carlos Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. I'm like, oh man, they're right here in Encino. So they opened up briefly as Carlos Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, and then Horion started suing everybody for using the Gracie name. So then they ended up just using RCJ Machado. And I showed up, and I like, let's see if they can handle a wrestler. Got tapped out. I say 37 times because I don't really know how many times, but it seemed like somewhere around 37 times. A purple belt named Dave Meyer just wrecked me. Dave Meyer just put it on me. He was a purple belt at that time, just killed me. I'm like, and right there, most people run from that because they feel like they're exposed in this room and everyone thinks they're a pussy. And since I already thought of myself as a pussy, I didn't really care what these guys thought about me. I just knew that, damn, I could learn this because I wrestle and I'm like, it's just going to be practice. This guy's not like an alien. He doesn't have like magical powers. To me, I'm like, I'm going to learn this and be able to do this to people that fuck with me at clubs. Oh yeah, I'm down. So that's how I got obsessed, because I didn't think of myself as a tough guy to begin with. If I thought it was all tough and I went in there, I probably would have ran and said, I'll never come back to this place ever again and be exposed. All these guys probably think I'm a big fucking pussy. I never thought that. I'm like, oh shit, okay. Because my first goal was just to be able to do to a guy walking in on his first day what was done to me. That was all, because I knew 99.99999% of the population was that dude coming in on his first day. So my goal was to run a clinic on a dude's first day. That was my first goal. And then when I was able to do that, like in a year, then I'm like, okay, let me try to run clinics on guys that have been trying to train in 6 months or 2 months. And then, okay, white belts, I was able to run clinics on them after a couple of years. And I go, now let me try to tap out, run clinics on blue belts. That's my next goal. And then it just goes on and on and on. And then the goal is to, beat the experts at killing experts that kill experts.
Right.
At killing experts, Normal people. That's like that's
Did
boring.
you ever have
normal
like that
people
street
are boring.
fight moment when you were like, oh, like this shit works? Like
I
Or
never,
was just
I
in the
never
academy?
really, I never put a guy. I never get in fights. I mean, I've been in. I was in a riot once and held a guy in full guard and just held him, but I never really used jiu-jitsu on him. The one time, and I avoid fights. I'm a big pussy. I'm not trying to fight anybody, but I will. I have
Did
enough
Machado
confidence.
ever have you
I
guys
have-
ever have the guys come in? Like I trained at House, right? So we had Gracie Challenge. Any given Tuesday, some dude's gonna walk in off the street.
I
and-
did have this one. There was this one time where I was a purple belt and I lived in this like there was a big front house and there was a guest house in the back, and I lived in the guest house in the back. And in the front house, it was like a party house, a bunch of dudes hanging on the front yard, and there was a weed dealer. What was his name?
I don't think we need to know. This is
Jason. Let's just call him Jason. And he lived in the. He didn't live in the front house, but he was the weed dealer. He always come by and he would talk shit. He was about 6 foot, like lanky, shredded, not bulky, but he was an athlete, played basketball or whatever, and he was a friend of mine, and he'd sell me weed every now and then, and I was people that don't train jiu-jitsu, they if they're hanging out with someone who trains jiu-jitsu, that's always on their mind for some reason. It's never on a jiu-jitsu player's mind, like they could, we're never sizing people up, really. We're not thinking about fighting. We're just doing jiu-jitsu, and every now and then, you might, if someone's acting up, you might think like, okay, I might have to choke this guy out, but we're not looking for fights ever. But people that don't do jiu-jitsu, you'll be in a normal conversation with them and they'll say like, I bet you could beat up everybody in this store, huh? Or I bet you could beat up, this guy could fuck everybody up. I'm like, dude, shut the fuck up. Like, we're not even talking about that. And you go, dude, I bet you could fuck, what are you gonna do, just like choke me out or something like that? I'm like, dude, this is getting annoying. You know what I mean? It's getting annoying. That's why the musicians that I would work with, because I produce music and I produce like hip hop, and at first I was working with like rappers that didn't do jiu-jitsu, and they were like in the middle of the session, they were like, dude, oh, what are you gonna do? Like choke me out? Are you gonna choke me out? You probably gonna fuck everybody up, right? This guy fuck everybody. I'm like, oh man, and I thought like, wouldn't it be great working with rappers that did jiu-jitsu? So that's what I started doing. Then like Campella and Al, they're my students. So then we never talk about that shit. Mm-hmm. Don't make it all uncomfortable with that. Right. Like you're constantly reminding me that you're insecure around me. Like they look at you like you're some killer and you want to kill everybody. I'm like, no, dude, that's the last thing on my mind, killing you, And so this guy, Jake was his name, Jake the Snake. I was close with Jason. But Jake would always, and all the guys in the front house, and the more I did jiu-jitsu and the more I tried to convince these guys to do jiu-jitsu, the more they didn't want to, because they knew I was just getting better and better, and they didn't want to get exposed. They didn't want me to beat them in jiu-jitsu, so my friends never go. So none of my friends, I couldn't get any of my friends to do jiu-jitsu because they didn't want me to beat them in jiu-jitsu. So then over time, you just become friends with the people at the jiu-jitsu school. So all your friends become guys that do jiu-jitsu. Just little by little, you just like dudes that don't jiu-jitsu, you don't really hang out with them too much. All my friends do jiu-jitsu, all of them. I don't like at least a little bit. They did trained a little bit before, and so Jake was always like, you think he was like, I got in a bunch of street fights. You think that shit's gonna work on me? And then he would joke around like, you think you take me down? Whatever. But shit, how many fights you been in? You think that work on a real fight? Fights, you can't even strike, And he would always say little stupid remarks like that. And then one day, Saturday day, I just got back from jiu-jitsu. I just went through some wars. I get home. I'm right in my front door, and Jake opens the side door. He goes, hey, you think you can take me down? You think you can take me down? You can't take me down. You think you can work with it? And I'm like, right there, I just snapped. I put my bag down. I go, let's go in the front yard. We went in the front yard, and I said, you want to do this? Like, you want to test yourself with me? Like, I was just like not in a good mood. I didn't want to hear his yapping anymore. I go, let's do this. He goes, all right. So you think you can take me down? Come on. You think we're on the front grass? I go, you want there to be punches or not? He goes, no. He goes, because if you want there to be punches, we could do a full fight right now. We could do UFC style right now. He goes, no. Just see if you can take me down. Just see if you can take me. You can't. What are you gonna do? You can choke me out? You can't choke me out. So then, and my takedowns suck. Even though I wrestled, I had horrible takedowns. Took his ass down, and I wasn't an arm triangle guy at this time. I never was, but I knew how to do it, but it wasn't my go-to. And at purple belt, it wasn't until then, because I just take him down, mount him so easily. I had no idea. Mount him. And as he turned, I'd put him right in an arm triangle. And he freaked out. He tapped, and he gets up. And just like all them Gracie in action fights, they never think, they go, one more time, let's do it again. I'm like, okay, let's do it again. Same exact scenario. Took him down. He turned the exact same way right into an arm triangle. And I'm not even that good at him. Tapped him again. He's freaking out. It's like, okay, one more time. I go, here we go again. The exact same thing. 3 arm triangles in a row. He couldn't fucking believe it. He was like, just shocked. And then I said, that's it? You want to do it again? Go, no, it's okay. So I went back to my house, and then he comes knocking on my door, opens the door, and he said, that was fucking pretty good, man. That was good. That was good. I go, but there wasn't any punches, so don't, And I go, dude, we could do this with punches right now. We could do this with punches right now.
I was going to ask, you didn't hit him just once,
No, you're a bad motherfucker. I respect you, you're a bad motherfucker. But there wasn't any punches, but you're a bad motherfucker. I'm like, dude, and he just kept going, dude, I can't believe, he just going on and on and on, how he couldn't believe it. He's like, fuck, that's crazy. I couldn't do shit. How the fuck you do that? Fuck. He was just, and from that point on, I realized how important arm triangles were. And then I got balls. Arm triangles were my go-tos. Even though I've never done it in competition, that's the most common thing that I do. And I mount, I underjack, and I arm triangle. That's one of the most common things I do. And it was because of that day I realized, like, man, that's important, because they're going to turn right into it. Boom. And it's right there, the arm. And the great thing about the arm triangle, if there was only one move that you were allowed to do, and you had to pick one move, and that's all you were allowed to do, I think the most important move in MMA is, or even in grappling, is the arm triangle. I think because you don't need to get the back. Rear naked choke, that's the granddaddy of them all. But you got to get their back first for a rear naked choke. You know what I mean? Some guys, you just can't get their back. You could set up an arm triangle from the bottom. You could set it up from half guard. I get them from half guard all the time, from the bottom or top. Top half, I don't even need to pass your guard, and I could get you with it. And I set you up, and then I'll pass your guard later and mount you. Never needed to get your back. So that's why I think I think it's probably nowadays the most popular finish in MMA. You see arm triangles all the time in the UFC. You don't need to get that back. High level guys, good luck trying to get their back, but you could arm triangle, especially when you add punches. They just it opens right up. So. And there's another thing too, real quick with Eric's story. He'd love to get he'd love to use his jiu-jitsu, and he told me this one story where, dude, he was like driving, and there was a road rager, and he road raged and goes, you want to get the fuck out? They're on the side of the fucking road. They go, fuck you. They pulled over, boom, they both get out, and they fucking start brawling. And dude, it took them, they were brawling, and this guy knew how to fight. This guy knew jiu-jitsu. And then Eric goes, dude, you train or what? He goes, yeah. He goes, where do you train? Eric goes, I train at Hickson. Where do you train? I train with Kaiki or some shit. And he goes, really? Fuck. And they're like in the guard, stalemate, and they just got up, and they just went their separate ways, and they left.
Hey, but once they both knew they were jiu-jitsu guys, they're like, okay, no problem.
Because this is not going as planned. Because you know jiu-jitsu? He goes, yeah. Where do you train? Shit, how long you been training? What belts are you? Okay, cool. You ever compete? Yeah. They're like, they're all buddies, and they just.
Who's your sponsor?
I grew up fighting, so it was kind of like I was kind of used to it by the time I was in. Really
Give me your
fighting.
greatest fight story.
Greatest fight story.
That one when Ari Shafir was with you.
Okay. Yes, we were in Nashville. I was with a girl named AJ.
You fought MMA 3 times, right?
Yeah, I fought MMA 3 times. Opponents weren't that great, but
okay.
Yeah, fought MMA 3 times.
Got your black belt from Lloyd.
I got my black belt from Lloyd. I actually started. I was one match away from being All-American wrestling. Started boxing when I was 13. My dad and uncle were boxers as well.
Okay.
So I kind of grew up in a fighting family per se. And best fight story is, that I was with my girlfriend AJ. We actually went to one of Joe's comedy shows in Nashville. Ari Shafir was opening for him, and we went out afterwards. And so we went to Dan McGinnis, which was a restaurant that I was a partner in, and had a few drinks there and left and went down to this place called Tin Roof. And I'm standing on this booth, and AJ is on the ground dancing in front of me. And this girl taps AJ on the shoulder. She's like deeper in the booth. It was really like, let's say a 10-foot booth, very deep. She like scoots over to tap AJ on the shoulder and say, hey, get your boyfriend's ass out of my face. And she's like, his ass isn't in your face. Then she taps me and says, get your ass out of my face. And I said, my ass isn't in your face. And granted, it's a very crowded bar. Joe and Ari are there with us as well. And it was kind of like, it was very crowded. And the next thing I know, a guy taps me on the shoulder, and I turn around and I look up. And when you can like tell someone is a professional lineman, like a football, they got to be a professional athlete, and especially when I looked up this guy's stats, he was 6'3", 345 pounds. Yeah, white guy, 6'3", 345 pounds. And he's like, hey,
300?
345. Yeah.
Oh,
so
shit.
no matter what, it's a dangerous fight. I don't care how skilled you are.
Yeah.
He's got giant fists. If he just clips my jaw, I'm going to sleep. Or if he gets me in a weird position where I can't move, like this guy's a powerful professional athlete. I knew that. But he's like, hey, get your ass out of my girlfriend's face. I'm like, my ass is in your girlfriend's face. And he pushes me. He and I are both standing on this booth now. He pushes me off of the booth. And he's already way taller than me by 5 inches. And if he was still standing on the booth, he would be another, foot taller than me. And so I grabbed his shirt so he would be standing on the ground with me, or his shirt would rip off. And so as I'm falling off the booth, I grab his shirt. We're both standing on the ground. He goes to grab my throat, and I sidestep, and I just start hitting him in the jaw. And I hit him with 3 punches. They weren't big punches, but I was aiming at his jaw, like chopping down a tree. I was just trying to chop the tree in the jaw 3 times. He dropped to a knee, jumped on his back. I'm squeezing. He had a thick neck. I was like, gosh, when is this guy going to go to sleep? Finally goes to sleep. I'm holding at it because I wanted to get out of the bar. And I wanted him to stay asleep for a while. 1001. I was holding it for 7 seconds. Just counting in my head. Ari Shafir taps me on the shoulder. Ed, he's asleep. I was like, I know. I want him to sleep for a while. Let him go. Take off running off the bar. Got away scot-free.
Rear naked choke. On a 345. And then how did you find out? Like later you looked him up?
Oh, yeah.
You found out who he was?
Later I looked him up, yep. And, it was one of those things that fight specifically could have gone bad for me because of his size.
Yeah.
But you got to rely on your technique. One of the things that I think is great about like old school jiu-jitsu is, was the philosophy of relying on your technique. My third mixed martial arts fight, I basically came out of the crowd and fought somebody because a guy got hurt backstage. And the guy wasn't very good that I fought. I wanted to show off, so I shot a double leg, picked him up, slammed him, passed the guard, go to mount, just start blasting, take his back, blasting, trying to choke him. A minute and a half in, I had punched myself out.
Gas.
I'm like, oh my God, I can't move my arms. Like, this is horrible. And so just dominate position. Thank God the guy wasn't good, because he would have, destroyed me at that point.
Yeah. Cardio is everything. And when you're going against someone who's a skilled fighter, he's a warrior, you're in a cage. If you don't have cardio, that's part of the cardio. There's the diet, there's the mentality.
Oh, yeah.
There's the technique.
Yep.
And then there's the cardio. That's 4.
Yep.
That's 4 huge things. That you don't have all 4, you're fucked.
And it was a bad feeling. I'll never forget that feeling, because I thought to myself, you just feel like I couldn't hold my arms up, dominate position, good technique, breathe. I started out with the Hickson School, so it was very much, basics, but then breathing in between and lots of pressure and technique. And I just kind of relied on that thing to win that fight. But Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu technique, it works. Especially if you're going against somebody that doesn't know what you're doing, there's really no way to stop a rear naked choke. If you get a rear naked choke locked in, I don't care who you are, I'm going to choke you out. Like, I don't care. Like, you're done every single time. And that's the power of, good technique. The technique in that fight was, against the big guy, rear naked choke, I knew the technique. It was taking longer, but I just believed. I know my technique. I know this is in. It's just taking longer for whatever reason. Maybe had a little doubt for a second until he went out. But, that was probably the most notable fight that I had.
Boha.
Yeah, Boha. So Eddie, I guess to close out, how you feeling?
Yeah, I feel great, man. I came down a mess. I had surgery on my right knee. They took out a bunch of meniscus, and man, I couldn't play rubber guard at all. It's been over a year and a half since my surgery, and just doing this was I'd feel it in here, just tender, but there's zero inflammation, and this does not hurt at all. This is incredible. This is incredible.
That's awesome.
I wasn't playing. I don't play rubber guard with this leg anyways, so it was just my like. It wasn't that important, but I wasn't able to bring this hurt like this. Now, man, it's not inflamed. And then this knee, my rubber guard knee, blew up. It was inflamed, and I couldn't squeeze any kind of compression like this would hurt. I couldn't squat, like sit down and squat, like on, you know what I mean, like you're all the way to the ground without the pain. There's something happened to it. It just got inflamed. I'm sure nothing tore, but it was like a severe sprain. And within 2 days before the stem cells, because we did the stem cells on day 3. So before the stem cells, inflammation was gone based on the hyperbaric chamber we did. We did ozone therapy. We did, some Gerson, a light Gerson. And then we did the NADH plus or whatever that thing is. So before the stems, my knees were deflamed.
Yeah.
Is that a word?
Yeah.
And my shoulder, that was the big one. I had major surgery on my shoulder about a year and a half ago as well. They reattached my bicep to my shoulder. It was falling off. It feels good. I don't know if it's ever going to be 100%. They say that, at 50, when you have surgeries that nothing, but it feels good. It doesn't, there's, just a little, there's still a little tenderness, but we'll see how over time, the stem cells, see what they do, because we just did the stems yesterday. We injected the shoulder, we injected the knee, and then we added some stem cells through IV. It's going to take a while to see how it all regenerates everything. But one thing is crazy, is like staying here, I'm never up at 7 unless I have to catch a flight. If I have to catch a flight, I'm up at 5 sometimes, just dragging my ass out of bed. But the last couple of days, I've been waking up at 7. We don't even need to be up. And I don't know if my brain was reset. I don't know that NADH. I never even heard of that NADH till I came down. But man, I feel great right now.
It's great.
We'll see how long it lasts.
Well, it's the same thing to like combination approach. I mean, stem cells, it can be hit or miss. I've heard people that they've worked for. I've heard people that it hasn't worked for. But that's not just what we're doing. We're adding other things, combination approach. And yeah, I mean, I obviously.
And that PEMF.
Pulse electromagnetic field machine.
Yeah.
The PEMF 120. I love that thing. That's what's kind of funny about all this stuff. Scott and I have been, a lot of it, we've been getting it for our injuries and for our own bodies.
Yeah.
So the pulse.
You guys were doing everything right with me. You know what I mean? And we don't have cancer, and we're doing the same therapies. And although I don't even know if stem cell therapy helps cancer patients. It was completely separate. The stem cells.
We don't give stem cells to cancer patients, but it's still at a somewhat, I guess they would say, experimental stage. But there's a lot of data out there. And one of our actually, he used to be on our scientific advisory board, Dr. Thomas Ecom. He's one of the most brilliant immunologists that I've ever met. Just a genius, just a real genius. He was partners with Neil Reardon in Panama. And he's got a lot of information on stem cells. He actually wrote the textbook with Reardon on stem cells. And he still says there's a lot of data that needs to come out. There's a lot of information that needs to come out. But they've got some good books, and they do great work out in Panama as well. So a little shout out to them.
And your stem cells are umbilical cord,
Yeah, these were the ones that you used were umbilical cord stem cells. Like the difference between stem cells really in the United States and the stem cells elsewhere, like Mexico or Panama, is if you get 10 million stem cells in the United States, you're getting like 1 to 3% mesenchymal stem cells, so 1 to 3% MSCs. When you get stem cells here, you're getting 10 million MSCs. Now, there's a lot of other good things like the umbilical cord stem cells in the U.S., like growth factors that could possibly help. But here you are getting 100% MSC, so it's pretty cool. We're excited about doing this finally at CHIPSA. We've been working on it for a while. We wanted to get more data out. We wanted to really wrap our heads around it, and we wanted to make sure that we I don't want to say satisfied with the cancer aspect, but I mean we didn't want to lose focus. So we've got that to a point where we've got what we think is a solid lineup of treatments and methodology, and we got our scientific advisory board that helps kind of put that together, and we got some great scientists in the hospital to help put it together, the methodology, and then now it's like, okay, now let's move on to some stem cell stuff, and we've got actually Dr. Santosh Kesari, who's the chief of neuro-oncology at the John Wayne Cancer Institute. He's an MD, PhD, former Harvard professor. We haven't signed this deal yet, but he's open to collaborating on a trial on here. He's like, if you're going to do stem cells, you got to collect the right data. He's like, that's the only way I'll be a part of it is if you get the data. So I'm actually going to meet with him on Saturday and see exactly what data he needs and who we need to hire. But I can't wait to see the results overall and see how it turns out. I think for joints, we'll see how it works fully. I think for autoimmune diseases and different type of specifically autoimmune diseases, I think what it does to the immune system really does make sense and could produce some amazing results. So
beautiful. I'll be back within a month or two or something to get a checkup and to monitor my progress.
Sure.
And we'll see what's up. We'll let you guys know what's up.
Well, man, thanks so
good.
much.
Thank you,
for being
man.
on the
H
Big Idea
Bravo,
podcast.
H Bravo.
Scotty Nelson.
My friend.